Chapter 23-28. How could one change the human world and the universe if they didn't experience the sufferings of the mortal world? When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart was suddenly moved. Indeed, as he'd said before, if one wanted to change the world, one had to first enter the human world and experience the sufferings of the mortal world. Otherwise, how could one change the world? After entering the academy, Yi Xian realized that the students of the academy did everything themselves. Although they weren't weak, none of them used their own abilities to make things easier for themselves. Doing everything themselves. When Xiao started to light a fire and cook. He really was cooking. When Xiao looked at Yi Xian and smiled. The pavilion master said that the high and mighty immortals are unable to change the universe because they don't know the thoughts and needs of the people at the bottom. So, the students of the academy must go to the human world and experience the lives of those at the bottom. Only by knowing their sufferings and difficulties can we change them. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Indeed. When Xiao pointed at a straw hut in the distance. Young Master Yi, that straw hut contains all the ancient books collected by the Wuxia Academy. If you like, you can go in and take a look. Of course, you can't take it away. Yi Xian smiled. Is it open to everyone? When Xiao smiled. These ancient books are open to everyone. Of course, those cultivation methods and divine abilities are not open to the public. As he spoke, he shook his head. Actually, in my opinion, the ancient books in that hut are more important than those cultivation methods and divine abilities. Cultivation usually cultivates the heart, and reading is the best way to calm the heart and improve one's thinking. But many people tend to overlook this point and think that reading is useless. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm going to read." As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and walked towards the straw hut. Gu Han was silent for a moment before he stood up and followed. When Xiao glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and remained silent. After entering the straw hut, Yi Xian noticed that the interior of the straw hut was a huge square. The square was filled with ancient books, and there were at least a few million of them. Yi Xian was instantly excited when he saw this. Obviously, these should have been collected by Qin Guan. In the following period of time, Yi Xian began to crazily read books. In fact, it was much easier for a cultivator to read books compared to an ordinary person. This was because a cultivator's memory was very heaven-defying. It was completely possible for them to have a photographic memory. However, many cultivators would not spend their time on things like reading books. After all, after stepping onto the path of cultivation, everyone's goal was either immortality or invincibility. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. Today was the day of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's auction. After bidding farewell to Wen Xiao, Yi Xian left the Wuxia Academy with Gu Han. However, before he left, he copied the millions of ancient books. He had to bring them back to the Guanxian Academy. These books were extremely precious. If he brought them back, it would be of great help to the Guanxian Academy. Wen Xiao did not stop Yi Xian, because there were copies of these ancient books, and there were quite a few of them. On the way to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian was extremely excited. The value of those books was immeasurable. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the side. Gu Han. Gu Han stopped and turned to look. Not far away, a beautiful woman slowly walked over with a young man. The beautiful woman wore a bright red dress with a very low neckline, revealing a large area of her ample bosom. Her face was like a hibiscus, and her eyes were like peach blossoms. She was extremely seductive. The man beside the beautiful woman was also extremely handsome. In terms of appearance, he didn't lose to Yi Xian at all. However, he was dressed very flirtatiously and even wore bright lipstick. Therefore, compared to Yi Xian, he was a little more seductive. On the other hand, Yi Xian was calm and had the elegant aura of a scholar. Seeing this beautiful woman, Gu Han frowned slightly. Madame Xiao. Madame Xiao's mouth twitched. She was extremely charming. Gu Han, you're still so cold. Speaking to there, she changed the topic and looked at Yi Xian with a slight smile. How should I address you, little brother? Yi Xian smiled and said, Yi Xian. Madame Xiao blinked. Yi Xian? Good name. As she spoke, she began to size up Yi Xian without any hesitation. Her gaze was like that of a hunter looking at his prey. Seeing Madame Xiao's gaze, the beautiful man turned to look at Yi Xian with a dark look in his eyes. Seeing Madame Xiao's fiery gaze, Yi Xian frowned slightly. He turned to look at Gu Han and said, You guys catch up, I'll be leaving first. After saying this, he turned and left. This Madame Xiao was clearly not a good woman. Of course, he was not interested in her private life, so he chose to leave. At this moment, the beautiful man beside Madame Xiao suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said coldly, How unruly. You actually want to leave when your elders are talking. You're simply lacking in upbringing. You should. At this moment, Yi Xian's right hand suddenly grabbed his throat. Madame Xiao and Gu Han were both stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at the beautiful man and said, Even my father didn't teach me how to do things. Who the hell do you think you are? After saying this, he slammed the man's throat onto the ground. Boom! Before everyone's eyes, the man's peerlessly beautiful face split open and blood splattered everywhere. Everyone was stunned. At this moment, Madame Xiao's expression suddenly turned cold. She looked at Gu Han and said coldly, Gu Han, you have to look at the owner before you hit a dog. Gu Han said indifferently, Then hit him. I didn't stop you. Madame Xiao was stunned, then she laughed out of anger, Good, very good. Saying this, she directly looked at Yi Xian in the distance, Young man, so vicious and merciless, you. Yi Xian suddenly interrupted the beautiful woman's words, Is he your gigolo? The beautiful woman was stunned. The surrounding crowd was also stunned. So direct? The beautiful woman stared at Yi Xian, her gaze like a sword. Yi Xian pointed at the beautiful man at his feet, Why does he dare to target me? Obviously, you spoil him. Come to think of it, he usually relies on you to act like a tyrant. But I'm not his father, why should I spoil him? At this moment, the beautiful man at Yi Xian's feet suddenly said fiercely, Kill me if you have the guts. Kill me. Madame Xiao suddenly said, Try and touch him. Before everyone's eyes, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom! The beautiful man's head exploded into pieces, and his soul was obliterated. Everyone in the surroundings gasped when they witnessed this scene. He actually killed someone in Celestial Treasure City? Madame Xiao suddenly chuckled, Interesting, truly interesting. As she spoke, she shook her head slightly, I thought you were a different kind of man, but now it would seem like you're an idiot as well. All I had to do was provoke you slightly, and you really killed someone. Young man. When she spoke up to this point, she grinned, This is Celestial Treasure City. Celestial Treasure City. Everyone present looked at Yi Xian and shook their heads secretly when they heard him. Obviously, killing someone in Celestial Treasure City was extremely stupid. Because killing someone here was equivalent to going against the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Right at this moment, two formidable auras suddenly appeared in the distance. Demigods. The beautiful woman's smile grew brighter when she witnessed this scene, Idiot, pay a heavy price for your stupid actions. Meanwhile, two old men appeared here, and they were the two demigods from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In the surroundings. Under everyone's gaze, the two old men slowly walked up to Yi Xian. Just when everyone thought the two old men were going to attack Yi Xian, the two old men actually bowed deeply to Yi Xian. The leading old man said respectfully, Young Master Yi. Young Master Yi? Everyone here was stunned. Madame Xiao was stunned on the spot. The old man in the lead bowed respectfully to Yi Xian again. "Young Master Yi, please forgive us for being late." Everyone was speechless. Yi Xian glanced at Madame Xiao and ignored her. He was about to leave when Madame Xiao suddenly spoke fiercely, "Unfair. Unfair." The old man in the lead frowned when he heard this. Madame Xiao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "The Celestial Treasure Pavilion is unfair. I refuse to accept this." As she spoke, she pointed at Yi Xian furiously. "He killed someone in Celestial Treasure City. According to the rules of Celestial Treasure City, he should be killed and hung on the city walls." The old man in the lead suddenly spoke furiously, "Shut up." As soon as he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and a terrifying force surged out. Madame Zhao's expression changed slightly, and she punched out. Rumble. Madame Xiao was blasted back by over 1 kilometer. After stopping, Madame Zhao's expression was extremely unsightly. Why? Why? Why are you still protecting him when he broke the rules? It's unfair. This world is unfair. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Oh my God, it seems that you guys started this, didn't it? Moreover, you provoked me to kill your gigolo on purpose. Why do you make it seem like I'm an unforgivable evil?" Madame Xiao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "The rules of Celestial Treasure City state that we can't fight, or we'll be breaking the rules of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. I only talked and didn't fight, but you did. If Celestial Treasure Pavilion doesn't punish you, the heavens won't forgive you. Also, Celestial Treasure Pavilion broke the rules this time. In the future, who will follow the rules of Celestial Treasure Pavilion?" Yi Xian suddenly turned and looked at the old man beside him. "The rules of Celestial Treasure City state that we can't fight, right?" The old man hesitated for a moment before saying, "Yes." Yi Xian nodded slightly. He looked up and saw that it was noon. He thought for a moment before saying, "From today onwards, we can fight at noon in Celestial Treasure City." "Old man, everyone," Yi Xian turned and left. At this moment, Madame Xiao suddenly said angrily, "You think you can change the rules just because you say so? Who do you think you are? You." In the distance, a voice suddenly sounded from above Celestial Treasure Pavilion. "From today onwards, we can fight at noon in Celestial Treasure City." Celestial Treasure Pavilion's president Xiaolan. Hearing this, everyone in the city was petrified. The rules were really changed? In the distance, Madame Xiao was stunned, and then she said with a trembling voice, "Holy shit. Ridiculous. P.S. I wanted to say some nonsense and share some interesting things in real life, but after thinking about it, I deleted it. Because I didn't want to be scolded. Now that the internet was in chaos, it was ridiculous. A kind word warms people for 3 winters, but an evil word hurts people for 6 months. Sometimes, a single sentence from a reader could really make an author depressed for a long time. Scolding people online didn't require any capital, and there was no need to take responsibility. Therefore, many people didn't have any scruples, and they didn't care whether their malicious words would affect or hurt others. As for updating, it wasn't an excuse. Once people got married and started a family, there would be many mundane things to do. This was something that one couldn't help but feel helpless about. Anyway, thank you everyone for your support and companionship, and thank you for reading my book. If you want to scold, don't bring your family. Just scold me. Chapter 23-29. Everyone in the city was completely dumbfounded. Especially those who were watching Yi Xian. They did not expect that the rules of Celestial Treasure City would be broken by a young man. No, not broken, but changed. As Madame Xiao said, this was outrageous. Of course, more people were curious about the young man's identity. Could he be a relative of Celestial Treasure Pavilion's pavilion master? Gu Han glanced at Madame Xiao. Idiot. Then, she turned and left. Madame Xiao, at this moment, the 2 demigod elders appeared in front of Madame Xiao. Seeing this scene, Madame Zhao's expression changed drastically. Xiao family. I am Xiao family, the leading old man sighed in a low voice. It's useless. Madame Xiao, no one knew how Celestial Treasure Pavilion dealt with Madame Xiao. Anyway, since then, Madame Xiao never appeared in Celestial Treasure City again. Today was the day of Celestial Treasure Pavilion's auction. Thus, Celestial Treasure City was extremely lively. Many forces rushed over from all over the universe. The reason why they were so enthusiastic was that Celestial Treasure Pavilion was going to auction a relic. Dao God's Secret Realm. This secret realm was built by a Dao God. Speaking of Dao God, he was undoubtedly a legendary figure. In the current historical records, he was the first person to surpass the ancient God realm. Currently, the limit of the known universe was the ancient God realm. There had never been an expert above the ancient God realm, and this Dao God was also a legend. However, no one expected that Qin Guan actually found the Dao God's secret realm. What did that mean? It meant that this Dao God really existed. In other words, finding this secret realm was very likely to obtain the Dao God's inheritance. Demigod experts were moved, ancient God experts were moved, and ancient God experts were even more moved. Thus, the forces that came to this auction were all super forces of various universes. Just as Yi Xian and Gu Han arrived at the entrance of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Xiaolan personally came out to greet them. Xiaolan smiled. Young Master Yi, I will take you to your room. Then, he made an inviting gesture and led the way. Under Xiaolan's lead, Yi Xian and Gu Han came to a luxurious room. From this position, they could overlook the entire auction venue. It was the best position. Xiaolan smiled and said, Young Master Yi, are you also here for the ruins? Yi Xian was a little curious. What ruins? Xiaolan was slightly startled, then explained, Dao God ruins. Yi Xian frowned, Dao God ruins? Xiaolan nodded, I wonder if young Master Yi has heard of Jun Daoshan from back then. Yi Xian shook his head. Xiaolan said in a low voice, this person is an extraordinary genius, the #1 expert in the known universe because he is the first person to surpass the primordial God realm. When he spoke up to hear, he paused for a moment and said, of course, it can't be compared to the Yang clan. Yi Xian was speechless. Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian in shock. Xiaolan continued, previously, we received news from the pavilion master that the specific location of these ruins is being auctioned. If young master wants to bid for the map of these ruins, I'm afraid you will need to prepare at least 200 million universe veins. Yi Xian frowned, if I need it, I can just look for Qin Guan, right? Hearing this, Xiaolan was slightly stunned, and then he hurriedly said, yes, yes. He suddenly blushed with shame. Only now did he remember that the relationship between Yi Xian and his pavilion master was not good. Like this. To outsiders, this map of the ruins was extremely precious, but in Qin Guan's hands, it was probably no different from waste paper. If Yi Xian needed it, he could just ask her for it. Wouldn't that be a very simple matter? Yi Xian suddenly asked, is there anything I can use in today's auction? Xiaolan said in a low voice, today, we will auction 2 God items. First, the Dao God ruins, and second, the Heaven and Earth Dao Stone Fragment. Yi Xian frowned, the Heaven and Earth Dao Stone Fragment? Xiaolan nodded, this complete Heaven and Earth Dao Stone contains 3 extremely terrifying powers, the power of the past, the power of the present, and the power of the future. Yi Xian suddenly thought of something, and a few breaths later, a sword appeared in front of Xiaolan without any warning. Slash the future. Yi Xian looked at Xiaolan, is it like this? Xiaolan shook his head, young Master Yi, this is only slashing the future, purely slashing the future, and you do not truly possess the power to slash the future. This is a special kind of power, in secular terms, your sword slash the future only has form, and no inner strength, which means that you do not truly control the power of the future. Of course, this sword of yours is also extremely strong, because it is too strange, and your attainments in the way of the sword are extremely high, but to true experts, it is not much of a threat, such as the ancient god realm. And that heaven and earth Dao stone, if it is a complete heaven and earth Dao stone, once it is activated, it can easily slash an ancient god realm. Yi Xian said softly, is it that powerful? Xiaolan nodded, very powerful. This god item fragment was placed here by the pavilion master to be auctioned. Yi Xian was a little puzzled, if it is so powerful, why is she auctioning it? Xiaolan smiled bitterly, the pavilion master does not like it. Yi Xian, Xiaolan suddenly stood up, young Master Yi, the auction is about to begin, I need to preside over it. If you need anything, just let me know. Yi Xian nodded, go. Xiaolan bowed slightly, then retreated. On the square, Yi Xian looked down. At this time, more and more people had arrived. He was a little shocked, because the weakest among them was at least at the nascent profound realm. There were even more demigods and ancient gods. Obviously, many forces wanted to obtain this ruin. Dao God's inheritance. Yi Xian directly gave up on this idea because he did not have that much money. At this time, the Daebi on Yi Xian's waist suddenly trembled. Yi Xian stood up. Beside him, Gu Han frowned, what is it? Yi Xian's eyes narrowed, danger. Danger. In that instant, Daebi gave him feedback. Danger. Daebi had never given him such feedback before. At this time, Daebi's voice suddenly resounded in his mind, leave immediately. Leave immediately. Yi Xian's expression instantly became serious. He knew that something big was about to happen. Without any hesitation, he opened his palm and was about to activate the Mystic Sky token to call Xiaolan. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped the entire celestial treasure pavilion. At this instant, the expressions of countless experts in the hall changed drastically. Someone is going to attack the celestial treasure pavilion? Below, Xiaolan's eyes narrowed, and his right hand slowly clenched. Who ate leopard's gall? Who dared to attack the celestial treasure pavilion? At this moment, a room suddenly turned into a pitch-black whirlpool. Xiaolan was horrified when he saw this scene, presumptuous. Presumptuous. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up and grabbed at the whirlpool with his right hand. At this moment, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from the whirlpool. Rumble. In an instant, Xiaolan, who was an ancient god, was blasted over 100 kilometers back. At the same time, the entire celestial treasure pavilion collapsed, and all the experts below the half-god realm perished in an instant. The entire celestial treasure city was shocked. That's an ancient god. Did an ancient god attack the celestial treasure pavilion? On the other side, Xiaolan looked towards the distance with astonishment. At this moment, his body had actually shattered. He hadn't fought an ancient god in the past, and this was the first time. Only now did he realize how great the gap between him and an ancient god was. As if he'd thought of something, Xiaolan hurriedly opened his palm, and a command token shot into the sky. Contact Qin Guan. This matter is very serious, and I must contact Qin Guan. However, in next to no time, Xiaolan's expression changed once more because he noticed that he couldn't contact Qin Guan. Can't contact him? What's going on? Xiaolan's face suddenly turned slightly pale. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian and Gu Han appeared on a boundless wasteland. The sky above them was dark gray, and it was slightly oppressive. Yi Xian closed his eyes and thought to himself. Who was targeting him? He basically had no enemies now. Was it Madame Xiao from before? Obviously not, the other party shouldn't have such a terrifying ability. Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan? That was also impossible. Although he had agreed to help Gu Han compete with them, the other party shouldn't have done this to him. Moreover, the Imperial Wilderness Celestial clan probably didn't have such terrifying strength. Ancient God. Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He thought of the ancient god of the divine Mountain Yen clan. Obviously, it should be that person. After so long, he thought that the other party had forgotten him. Obviously, he was thinking too much. At this moment, in the distance in front of Yi Xian, the ground suddenly split open. Then, a huge blood-red altar suddenly floated up. On this altar, he saw two middle-aged men. One of them was the ancient god he met at the divine Mountain Yen clan. And beside this middle-aged man stood a middle-aged man in a bright red robe. This middle-aged man didn't look old, but he had a head of white hair. As the altar slowly rose, Yi Xian discovered that there were 6 mysterious black-robed people standing below the altar. And these 6 people were all in the ancient god realm. When he saw this, Gu Han's face instantly turned pale. What kind of lineup was this? 1 ancient god, 7 ancient gods. At this time, the ancient god on the altar looked at Yi Xian. You didn't expect this, did you? We meet again. Yi Xian smiled slightly. You made such a big lineup just to kill me? The ancient god stared at Yi Xian and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I am Xianmu from the profound god world. This person next to me is my profound god world's lord. I know that you have not heard of the profound god world, because with your knowledge and strength, you are not qualified to know such a high-level matter. Yi Xian glanced at the altar. On the altar, there was a huge blood pool with boiling blood. What are you trying to do? Xianmu looked at Yi Xian and chuckled. Wasn't the reason why you were so arrogant that day because you had Dedeabi? Do you think that with Dedeabi, you can do whatever you want? Do you think that with Dedeabi, you can act tough without restraint? Watch how we seal Dedeabi today. You will pay the most painful price of your life for acting tough that year. He pointed at Yi Xian angrily. Who asked you to act tough? Today, I will exterminate your 10 families. Chapter 23:30. The 10 Clans. Yi Xian fell silent. This mysterious operation is happening again. Could it be that Dedeabi has arranged for these fellows in front of me? Dedeabi, at this moment, the lord of the profound god realm suddenly turned around, opened his palm, and said softly, "Rise." Boom! All of a sudden, the blood in the altar behind him shot into the sky. In an instant, millions of kilometers of the sky were dyed blood red. At the same time, a huge blood vortex appeared above Yi Xian's head. At this moment, evil energy and killing intent filled the entire world. The lord of the profound god realm looked at Yi Xian. The blood of millions of living beings form a formation, seal. As soon as he finished speaking, the black vortex suddenly trembled violently. Then, a pillar of blood 300 meters wide descended from the sky. This blood pillar's main target was Dedeabi. Below, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes and clenched his right hand. Just when the lord of the profound god realm and the others thought that Yi Xian was going to resist, Yi Xian did nothing and allowed the blood pillar to drown him. Boom! In an instant, the entire world was turned into a sea of blood. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Rumble! 2 blood-colored sword lights suddenly shot out from his eyes. In an instant, the space-time in front of him was shattered. At this moment, Yi Xian was actually covered in blood. Boom! All of a sudden, the sea of blood between heaven and earth surged towards Yi Xian like a tidal wave. Seeing this scene, the lord of the profound god realm and the others were dumbfounded. What's going on? Because they realized that not only did their blood formation have no effect on Yi Xian, but Yi Xian was actually devouring the blood energy between heaven and earth. Most unbelievably, they realized that the killing intent and evil energy that Yi Xian was emitting was actually stronger than the killing intent and evil energy they emitted. What the hell? The lord of the profound god realm and the others were a little confused. Gu Han, who had retreated far away, also looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. She didn't expect that the usually gentle Yi Xian would emit such a terrifying evil energy and killing intent. It was as if he was a completely different person. What kind of person is this guy? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared to the sky. Rumble. In an instant, all the blood energy between heaven and earth was absorbed by him. Boom! All of a sudden, a dreadful energy swept out of Yi Xian's body. The space and time around him started to boil at this moment. After absorbing the blood qi, the power of his bloodline became even stronger. All along, his bloodline had been improving very, very slowly. This was because he wasn't like his father, who basically didn't do something like massacring an entire city. Because of this, his bloodline was improving very slowly. But now, the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm had taken the initiative to bring him so much fresh blood. Most importantly, the fresh blood was filled with endless killing intent and viciousness. To Yi Xian's bloodline, it was like a good rain after a long drought. Yi Xian's bloodline broke through and reached another level. In the distance, the Lord of the God Realm and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. Yi Xian's bloodline had improved. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up at Xian Mu, one-on-one. One-on-one. Xian Mu looked at Yi Xian, as you wish. After saying that, he was about to make a move, but the Lord of the God Realm stopped him. Xian Mu said in a low voice, Big brother, I know that we can't underestimate anyone, but I want to fight him fair and square. As he spoke, he turned his head. He looked at Yi Xian, I don't like him and I want to kill him with my own hands. The Lord of the God Realm fell silent. Xian Mu smiled, if Big Brother is worried, it's okay. If I can't win, you can fight him. How about it? Yi Xian, the Lord of the God Realm nodded, sure. Xian Mu suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. Today, at this moment, a sword suddenly slashed down. Void slash. This sword had appeared without any warning. However, Yi Xian went all out as soon as he attacked, and he even added the power of his bloodline. He naturally didn't dare to underestimate his opponent because he was facing an ancient God Realm expert. His first move was a killing move. Although Yi Xian launched a surprise attack, Xian Mu reacted quickly and blocked it with his arm. Boom! The sword light shattered and Xian Mu was knocked back thousands of meters. His right arm was split open, but in the next moment, he disappeared on the spot like an arrow released from a bow. Chi! In the battlefield, spacetime cracked. In the distance, Yi Xian slashed down instinctively. Rumble! An expanse of sword light exploded apart as Yi Xian retreated explosively. As he retreated, the space in front of him was suddenly torn apart, and then a fist shot towards his face. This punch caused the space in the surroundings to warp. Yi Xian suddenly moved to the side and avoided this terrifying punch. At the same time, he twisted his wrist and slashed his sword towards Xian Mu's stomach. However, Xian Mu's reaction was extremely swift. At the instant that he avoided that punch, he suddenly raised his knee and struck Yi Xian's sword. Bang! An expanse of sword light suddenly erupted in front of them. In the next moment, both of them retreated explosively, and a few dozen rays of sword light suddenly and mysteriously appeared in front of Xian Mu. Xian Mu's pupils constricted slightly when he saw these rays of sword light, and then he suddenly howled furiously while he clenched his fists tightly. After that, he raised his hands, squatted down, and shouted furiously, break! Rumble! A strand of terrifying energy suddenly swept out from within him. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian's swords were blasted flying, and it was at this instant that an afterimage suddenly charged over to him. After that, a blood-red sword slashed straight towards him. Bang! In an instant, Xian Mu was blasted over 10 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, a few hundred swords descended from the sky and drowned him beneath them. They were swords condensed from sword intent. Xian Mu's pupils had suddenly constricted to the size of needles when the swords assaulted him, and then he suddenly roared furiously. He spread open his right palm, and then countless black blades suddenly flew up into the air. Bang! 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 Suddenly, numerous explosions resounded here. The rays of sword light and blade light were ceaselessly blasted apart while Xian Mu retreated explosively. At the same time, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot. Hiss! A ray of blood-red light tore through the surroundings, and everywhere it passed, space was blasted into pieces. Right at this moment, a strand of terrifying force suddenly swept out from within the shattered rays of light. After that, a fist smashed forward with crushing might and shot straight at Yi Xian's ray of blood-red light. Rumble! The fist seal shattered and the sword light shone brightly. Both of them retreated by over 10 kilometers at the same time, and this retreat caused the space in an area of over 100 kilometers to shatter into nothingness like glass. It was pitch black. On the other hand, the terrifying energy created by the two of them still hadn't vanished. So, the shattered space was being gradually wiped away. The two of them were too strong. On the other side, Gu Han's eyes were filled with a solemn and shocked expression appeared on his face. She had never imagined that Yi Xian was actually powerful to this extent. Previously, she was still able to suppress Yi Xian, but now, Yi Xian was able to fight an ancient god on equal footing. This increase in strength was simply outrageous. It should be said that it was abnormal. But soon, she discovered why Yi Xian's combat strength was so terrifying. First, the power of bloodline. At the moment, most of Yi Xian's battle prowess came from the power of the bloodline that had just broken through. The power of the bloodline had increased his battle prowess by too much. Secondly, it was Yi Xian's sword intent. She discovered that the reason why Yi Xian could fight an ancient god head-on, other than bloodline power, was because of Yi Xian's sword intent. Yi Xian's sword intent was ridiculously powerful, able to injure an ancient god realm master. These two reasons allowed Yi Xian to fight an ancient god realm master head-on. The profound god world's lord also noticed this problem. Although Yi Xian's cultivation was only at the profound insight realm, his bloodline power and sword intent were indeed a little ridiculous. In the distance, Xian Mu's eyes were fixed on Yi Xian. At this moment, his body was covered in sword marks, some of which were extremely deep, almost cutting his flesh into pieces. Although he didn't like Yi Xian, he had to admit that Yi Xian's sword was truly terrifying. Yi Xian wasn't completely unscathed either. There was a deep fist mark on his chest. Just now, Xian Mu's punch had nearly shattered his flesh. Yi Xian took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. His body was trembling slightly. After devouring the blood qi, he almost lost control of his bloodline breakthrough. Fortunately, he had read a lot of books in recent days, allowing him to calm his mind. Otherwise, in that split second just now, the bloodline breakthrough would have made him lose his mind completely. Now, he couldn't lose his mind completely. He needed to keep himself awake. He didn't attack again. To him, the longer he could drag things out, the better, because after activating his bloodline power, his strength was constantly rising. There was no end to it. In the distance, Xian Mu clearly noticed this as well. He stared at Yi Xian and slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a terrifying power suddenly condensed in his fist. At this moment, the surrounding space and time began to shatter bit by bit. It was obvious that he was going to use his full strength. At this moment, Xian Mu soared into the sky. In the next moment, a giant black mirror suddenly flew out of his body. He held the mirror in his right hand and pointed it at Yi Xian. Rumble. A terrifying power suddenly surged out of the mirror. In an instant, a golden beam of light swept down. The moment this golden beam of light appeared, this unknown world actually began to shatter. Xianmu stared at Yi Xian below. Die. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up. In the next moment, he suddenly took off the Dadeabi at his waist. In the blink of an eye, his realm directly rose from profound insight to ancient God. At this moment, his realm was directly equal to Xianmu's. Below, Yi Xian waved his brush. The tip of the brush slashed out. Qi. In the sky, the beam of light was directly annihilated. At the same time, Xianmu was directly sent flying hundreds of thousands of meters away. Almost at the same time, the Lord of the Profound God realm suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He wanted to wave the Dadeabi again, but he found that it was already too late. Rumble. A cloud of blood suddenly exploded, and an afterimage violently retreated hundreds of thousands of meters away. When Yi Xian stopped, only his soul was left, and his physical body was already shattered. Yi Xian's soul fell to the ground and quickly disappeared. Chapter 23:31. Disregarding martial ethics. Ganging up on him. After Yi Xian landed on the ground, he was enraged. At this moment, a fragrant wind blew over and he felt he had entered an unknown spacetime. Gu Han. Gu Han actually came to his rescue at this crucial moment. Of course, she did not choose to fight the Lord of the Profound God world but chose to escape with Yi Xian. In the battlefield, the Lord of the Profound God world looked up at the sky with narrowed eyes. Trying to escape? He was about to give chase when an ancient God realm expert suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Lord, Xianmu." The Lord of the Profound God world turned his head abruptly. When he saw Xianmu, his expression turned ferocious. At this moment, Xianmu's soul was so dim that it was almost transparent. "It's gone." The Lord of the Profound God world quickly walked to Xianmu and said in a trembling voice, "You." Xianmu shook his head. "I can't." The Lord of the Profound God world's expression was extremely gloomy. Xianmu said softly, "I was too arrogant." That Dadeabi. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he said this. He was an ancient God realm expert while Yi Xian was a profound insight realm expert. Therefore, he was full of confidence. One should know that ordinary profound insight realm experts couldn't even fight back in front of him. However, Yi Xian was different. Yi Xian's bloodline power and sword intent far exceeded his expectations. His plan was to choose to gang up on Yi Xian if he couldn't win the last attack. However, Yi Xian didn't give him the chance and directly activated Dadeabi. Now that Yi Xian activated Dadeabi, it was simply too terrifying. Xianmu looked at the Lord of the Profound God world and said in a fierce voice, "Big brother, avenge me." As soon as he finished speaking, his soul completely disappeared. The Lord of the Profound God world's expression was incomparably ferocious. Xianmu was his younger brother. The two brothers grew up together and their relationship was not ordinary. Now that Xianmu was completely erased, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. The Lord of the Profound God world slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he was filled with regret. Incomparable regret. They shouldn't have let Xianmu and Yi Xian fight one-on-one. In the end, he was too careless. The Realm Lord of the Profound God realm raised his head and looked at the sky. His gaze was extremely cold. Escape? Let's see where you can run to. Send my order to all the heavens. Yi Xian is the mortal enemy of my Profound God realm from now on. Being friends with this person is equivalent to being enemies with my Profound God realm. Anyone related to Yi Xian will be killed by the Profound God realm. With that, he and the 6 ancient God realm masters beside him soared into the sky. Go after Yi Xian. The announcement of the Profound God realm quickly spread throughout the universe. Many people did not know much about the Profound God realm because it was a mysterious and ancient force. Only those who had reached a certain level of strength would know about this terrifying force. There was an ancient god realm in the profound god realm. Just this alone was enough to make countless forces in the myriad of worlds tremble in fear. Imperial Wilderness God Race. At this moment, Di Yuan's face was gloomy, and he did not speak. He had just received the announcement from the profound god realm. He knew a little about the profound god realm because the ancestors of the Imperial Wilderness God race had once come into contact with this force. Other than an ancient god realm master, this force also had at least 5 ancient god realm masters. Needless to say, this lineup was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Di Yuan was worried. Because he had previously said that Di Zhuang and Yi Xian had that kind of relationship, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Once this matter was known by the profound god realm, it would undoubtedly be a calamity for the Imperial Wilderness God race. Now, he was really in a dilemma. He had 2 choices now. The first was to help Yi Xian. Of course, he rejected this idea as soon as it appeared. What could the Imperial Wilderness God race use to go against the profound god realm? The second choice was to quickly express his loyalty to the profound god realm, then help them find Yi Xian and cut off his relationship with Yi Xian. He was hesitant about this choice. The third choice was to act as if he knew nothing. However, he was afraid because the profound god realm's announcement had stated that anyone related to Yi Xian would be killed. Needless to say, he was slightly panicking. Meanwhile, an old man by his side seemed to have noticed his worry and said, "Patriarch, we can do this. We can express our loyalty to the profound god realm and pretend to help them find Yi Xian. We can look for him in secret. If we find him, we won't attack and we can just leak information about Yi Xian to the profound god realm, right?" Di Yuan frowned slightly when he heard this. The old man spoke in a low voice, "That's the best way." Di Yuan fell silent for a long time before he said, "We'll do as you say." As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the distant sky, and a wisp of worry flashed through his eyes. Actually, he really did admire Yi Xian and had high hopes for Yi Xian. However, he didn't dare take the risk. After all, the strength of the profound god realm was truly too terrifying. He couldn't afford to take the risk. Di Yuan sighed softly, "Young Master Yi, it looks like you can't be my son-in-law." The immortal artifact dimension. Xiao Lan's expression was extremely unsightly. He'd received the announcement from the profound god realm as well, so he was naturally furious because the profound god realm dared to disregard the immortal artifact pavilion and capture someone within it. They were looking down on the immortal artifact pavilion. Even though he was furious, he was slightly helpless at this moment. Because he couldn't contact Qin Guan, and only Qin Guan could mobilize some special experts of the immortal artifact pavilion. He was extremely helpless at this moment. As if he'd thought of something, Xiaolan suddenly stood up, "Send down my order. Immediately search for young Master Yi. If we find him, we must protect him at all costs." At this moment, he finally realized what had happened. If something had really happened to Yi Xian, then it wouldn't be an ordinary matter. Most importantly, Yi Xian had been taken from the immortal artifact pavilion. Xiaolan suddenly stood up and left when he thought up to this point. He couldn't just sit there and do nothing. He had to look for other immortal artifact pavilions and ask for their help. Under normal circumstances, other immortal artifact pavilions might not care about him, but this matter concerned Yi Xian. Other immortal artifact pavilions would definitely not sit idly by. He was Pavilion Master Qin's friend. Somewhere in the boundless starry sky, Gu Han tore through space and time with Yi Xian as he ran madly. In her arms, Yi Xian's soul was extremely dim. Fortunately, he'd given himself a soul-nourishing pill, which Yang Nianxue had left for him. Otherwise, his soul might really disappear completely. Even so, he was still extremely weak at this moment because he'd forcefully used a deity to raise his cultivation to the ancient god realm. The consumption was too great, and he'd also suffered a full-powered attack from the ancient god realm expert. Currently, he was extremely weak, as if he'd been cultivating for 10 days and 10 nights. He didn't have the slightest bit of strength left. Gu Han suddenly said, "They're chasing after him. At this speed, they'll catch up in 15 minutes at most. Do you have any ideas?" "Ideas?" After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at Dedeabi in front of him. Looking at Dedeabi, he was speechless. Even his physical body was destroyed, but this brush was completely fine. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Brother Bai, you were looked down upon by them just now, don't you have any ideas?" He could only bluff this Dedeabi. Dedeabi suddenly said, "What ideas can I have?" Yi Xian frowned slightly, "Deal with them. Arrange for them." After a moment of silence, Dedeabi said, "My main body can't leave the Milky Way galaxy, how can I deal with them?" Yi Xian was puzzled, "Why can't your main body leave the Milky Way galaxy?" Dedeabi said indifferently, "It's complicated, I can't explain it in a few words." Yi Xian said solemnly, "They're looking down on you. Don't you have any ideas?" Dedeabi said, "Do you want me to help you fight them?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded, "Yes." After a long silence, Dedeabi said, "Big brother, I call you big brother, do you know how busy I am every day? I'm managing this endless universe. Do you know how many universes there are? I can only tell you, more than you can imagine. And every day, I have to manage the fate of all living things in this vast universe. Is it because in your heart, I'm very idle every day?" Yi Xian, Dedeabi continued, "Big brother, I have to work." Yi Xian was speechless. This guy doesn't want to help. A quarter of an hour. Yi Xian took a deep breath, he slowly closed his eyes, and then began to meditate to repair his divine soul. At the same time, he began to reconstruct his physical body. Boom! At this time, Yi Xian's bloodline suddenly circulated rapidly. He wanted to use the power of his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body. This was a sudden idea. Although his physical body had been destroyed, he found that his bloodline was still there. This bloodline was independent of his physical body and soul. Awesome! He hadn't expected that he could actually use his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body. Blood body? Yi Xian felt that it was slightly outrageous, but he had no choice but to continue. He needed a physical body now, and an ordinary physical body couldn't resist the power of an ancient god realm expert at all. It would simply shatter with a touch. Therefore, he could only hope that this bloodline body could be a little more amazing. Seeing Yi Xian use his bloodline to reconstruct his physical body, Gu Han instantly felt that it was slightly outrageous. She was already unable to understand it earlier. Because she found that after Yi Xian's physical body was destroyed, the power of his bloodline still existed. Bloodline is independent of the physical body? Gu Han shook her head. She found that the longer she stayed with Yi Xian, the more mysterious Yi Xian became. As if she'd sensed something, Gu Han immediately turned around, and a terrifying force was slowly approaching from the depths of the starry sky behind her. That ancient god realm expert has caught up to us. Gu Han's face instantly fell when she witnessed this scene, and then she gazed at Yi Xian who lay in her arms. "How much longer do you need?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "At least an hour." Gu Han immediately shook her head, "I can't hold on for an hour. They'll catch up to me in 10 minutes at most, and I'm unable to stop them with my current strength." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Then leave by yourself." Gu Han was slightly stunned, and then she fell silent. She'd had such a thought. Yi Xian smiled, "Don't think about it. Leave quickly. You've already owed me a huge favor by saving me earlier. If I survive today, then I'll definitely return this favor once I leave this place." Gu Han fell silent for a moment before she said, "Take care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, she put Yi Xian down and vanished into the starry sky. Chapter 2332. Gu Han left. He really left. Of course, Yi Xian had no intention of blaming Gu Han. Just as he said, Gu Han had saved him just now, which was a great favor to him. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and sat cross-legged on the ground. He had to recover his physical body before the ancient God Realm expert arrived. Only then would he have the strength to fight. Thinking of this, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He really couldn't stay cool for more than 3 days. Boom! At this time, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted in the distant starry sky. In the next moment, the starry sky where Yi Xian was at boiled with excitement. It's here! Yi Xian opened his eyes, which were filled with a sea of blood. At this moment, his physical body had recovered. Blood clone. His entire body was red like blood. This physical body was a little strange. Of course, he couldn't care less now, as long as he had a usable body. The Lord of the Profound God World appeared in front of Yi Xian, and behind him were 6 ancient God Realm experts. The Lord of the Profound God World looked into the distance and asked, "Where's the woman who saved you?" Yi Xian smiled, "She left." The Lord of the Profound God World sneered, "How practical." Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He slowly stood up, opened his palm, and a blood sword condensed in his hand. This was a sword condensed from sword intent and blood. The Lord of the Profound God World looked at Yi Xian, "Do you think you can fight me?" Yi Xian smiled, "Who do you think you are?" Huh. Boom. Suddenly, the Dedeabi in Yi Xian's hand shook violently, and in the next moment, his aura directly reached the ancient God Realm. However, this wasn't the end. Not long after, he advanced from the ancient God Realm to the ancient God Realm. Seeing this scene, the Lord of the Profound God World narrowed his eyes. He couldn't deny that he was shocked. Although he was shocked that Yi Xian had advanced to the ancient God Realm, he wasn't shocked. After all, it was normal to advance one realm. But now, Yi Xian had advanced from the profound see-through realm to the ancient God Realm. This was already abnormal. He was an ancient God Realm cultivator. He knew very well how difficult it was to advance from the ancient God Realm to the ancient God Realm. In the distance, Yi Xian's face was extremely pale. His entire body was trembling and extremely unstable. This was the first time he had used a deity to advance 2 realms. At this moment, he felt like he was floating in the air. Ancient God Realm. Yi Xian took a deep breath and looked at the Profound God Realm Lord in the distance. He opened his palm and the sword in his hand turned into deity. He realized that the stronger he was, the more powerful deity was. Holding the deity in his hand, Yi Xian took another deep breath. At this moment, the power of the bloodline in his body surged crazily. Strands of terrifying bloodline power gathered in the deity in his hand. At the same time, his mortal realm sword intent and mortal realm energy surged crazily at this moment. The Lord of the Profound God Realm narrowed his eyes. "All of you, step back." At his command, the 6 ancient God Realm experts behind him retreated hastily. They knew that the current Yi Xian was no longer a match for them. Staying here was meaningless. The Lord of the Profound God Realm opened his right hand. All of a sudden, the surrounding galaxy trembled violently. In the next moment, countless mysterious forces gathered in his right hand. The force of destiny. And the power of faith. As an ancient god, he naturally had the power of faith. At this time, Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the Lord of the Profound God Realm. "Let's decide life and death in one move." As his voice fell, he suddenly swung the brush in his hand. Chi! A blood-colored brush tip slashed out. The strongest attack in history. With this stroke of the brush tip, the star field within several million li was instantly erased. In the distance, the Lord of the Profound God Realm's eyes narrowed. The power of Yi Xian's attack far exceeded his expectations. Not daring to underestimate Yi Xian, the Lord of the Profound God Realm roared and punched out. Rumble. A terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth suddenly swept out from his fist. Head on. At this time, neither of them had a way out. When the brush tip slashed down, boom. Suddenly, a deafening explosion resounded in this part of the galaxy that had been erased. In the next moment, Yi Xian and the Lord of the Profound God Realm retreated rapidly. Both of them retreated hundreds of thousands of zhang away. When Yi Xian stopped, the physical body that was created by his bloodline suddenly shattered. But in the next moment, the shattered bloodline reformed, and he had a physical body again. On the other side, after the Lord of the Profound God Realm stopped, his physical body gradually disappeared. In just a few breaths' time, his physical body was completely annihilated. At the same time, his soul also gradually dimmed, almost transparent, but it did not completely disappear. The expressions of the 6 ancient God Realm Masters who were watching the battle from the other side turned extremely ugly when they saw this. They did not expect Yi Xian to be so terrifying that he almost killed their lord. That was an ancient God Realm expert. The Lord of the Profound God Realm raised his head to look at Yi Xian in the distance. His face was incomparably gloomy and solemn. That attack just now had almost wiped him out. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and Dedeabi appeared in his hand. He looked at the Lord of the Profound God Realm and grinned. Again? The Lord of the Profound God Realm narrowed his eyes. If I'm not wrong, you are now an arrow at the end of its flight. You don't have the strength to activate Dedeabi again, right? Yi Xian smiled. You can try. The Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then said, "Ah Tsang, you go." Hearing this, the expression of an ancient God Realm old man behind him changed dramatically. Lord, the Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian in the distance. He is now an arrow at the end of its flight, he has no strength left. Go ahead. The ancient God Realm old man's face was extremely ugly. No strength left? Damn it. What if he did? Who would be able to block the stroke of that brush? At this time, the Lord of the Profound God Realm turned to look at the old man, frowning slightly. Do you have a problem? In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly said, Bring it on. In the worst case, we'll just perish together. Hearing this, the ancient God Realm old man's face turned even uglier. The Lord of the Profound God Realm's face turned cold. Ah Tsang, Ah Tsang suddenly said, I quit. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was stunned. Ah Tsang's face was expressionless. Lord, from now on, I will withdraw from the Profound God Realm. With that, he turned and disappeared into the depths of the distant starry sky. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was speechless. On the other hand, the expressions of the other 5 ancient God Realm experts suddenly became strange. Fight? They definitely wouldn't dare to fight Yi Xian. They also knew that Yi Xian was now an arrow at the end of its flight, but it was better to be safe than sorry. What if Yi Xian swung the stroke before he died? Who could stop him? Anyone who attacked Yi Xian now was equivalent to perishing together with Yi Xian. Having cultivated to this level, they naturally didn't want to be killed so easily. The Lord of the Profound God Realm fell silent. He knew that if he let these people attack again, they would also leave. Thinking of this, he felt a little annoyed. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment, but now, these people were all greedy for life and afraid of death. How hateful. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, If you don't attack today, your lord won't say anything now, but what about in the future? If I were you, I would run away now, far away, because he doesn't have the ability to chase after you now. Hearing this, the several ancient God Realm Masters exchanged glances among themselves. The Lord of the Profound God Realm said coldly, Provoke? He sneered and turned to look at an old man, Li Qiu, one of you is naturally no match for him, but if the 5 of you attack him together, he will die without a doubt. This person is our profound God realm's mortal enemy. If he survives today, he will not let you go in the future." Hearing this, the old man named Li Qiu's expression changed. He was hesitating. Yi Xian suddenly laughed, "You should have investigated me, and since you have, you should know that I'm a scholar. The reason I built the academy is for the world to be at peace, not for killing. If you choose to leave today, I can promise you as a scholar that I will not seek revenge later." As he spoke, he opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. "Besides being a scholar, I'm also a sword cultivator. You can trust in my character." Li Qiu glanced at the dadeabi hanging on Yi Xian's waist, not saying a word. The Lord of the Profound God Realm was about to speak, but Li Qiu suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, take care." With that said, he and the 2 old men beside him disappeared into the horizon. The Lord of the Profound God Realm. In the end, Li Qiu was afraid. Why was he afraid? Because of dadeabi. Because of Yi Xian's bloodline. He was definitely not an ordinary person. How could an ordinary person possess dadeabi and such a terrifying bloodline power? Even if he attacked and killed Yi Xian, he would definitely be tainted with karma. In the end, he was afraid. Compared to the Lord of the Profound God Realm, he was more willing to believe in Yi Xian, because as Yi Xian had said, they had investigated Yi Xian before. And Yi Xian was really a scholar. The Lord of the Profound God Realm looked at Yi Xian, capable of both literature and martial arts, impressive. He was furious, but he could not show it. If he did, the remaining 2 would definitely leave. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the 2 remaining ancient God Realm experts. The reason why the 2 of them did not leave was because they could be considered as the trusted subordinates of the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm. They had followed the Realm Lord for many years and knew his character. If they left today, the Realm Lord would definitely not let them go. Although they were ancient God Realm Masters, they still couldn't escape the pursuit of an ancient God Realm Master. However, they did not dare to kill Yi Xian. He still had dadeabi in his hand. Therefore, they were hesitating. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at one of the black-robed ancient God Realm old men. "Do you want to take a risk?" The black-robed old man looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian smiled faintly. "With dadeabi in your hand, you can instantly ascend to the ancient God Realm. If you are willing to worship dadeabi, I can lend it to you and allow you to ascend to the ancient God Realm." The Lord of the Profound God Realm's expression changed drastically when he heard this. The black-robed old man asked excitedly, "Really?" Yi Xian nodded. "Of course, the prerequisite is that you are willing to worship dadeabi like me." The black-robed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "How can I believe you?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, "I am a scholar." The Lord of the Profound God Realm was speechless. Chapter 23-33. A Scholar. The Profound God World's Lord's expression instantly became unsightly when he heard Yi Xian's words. He noticed that this bastard was really good at deceiving people. There wasn't a single good person amongst scholars. Suddenly, the black-robed old man said, "I believe you." Yi Xian opened his palm, and dadeabi slowly floated over to him. The black-robed old man's gaze instantly burned with desire as he gazed at dadeabi. That was dadeabi, the legendary dadeabi. Suddenly, the Profound God World's Lord said, "Do you really believe him?" The black-robed old man spoke in a low voice, "He's a scholar. I believe in scholars." The Profound God World's Lord was speechless. The black-robed old man didn't waste his breath at all, and he immediately took hold of dadeabi. Under Yi Xian's authorization, the black-robed old man didn't harm dadeabi after taking hold of dadeabi. The Profound God World's Lord's eyes narrowed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and no one knew what he was thinking. Meanwhile, dadeabi trembled violently. Bang! The black-robed old man's aura suddenly rose explosively. In an instant, the black-robed old man's cultivation had risen from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm. A terrifying aura swept through the surroundings. The profound god world's lord's expression instantly became extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Yi Xian suddenly said, "I didn't lie to you, right?" The black-robed old man gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian grinned, "Are you thinking about killing me and enjoying the deity for yourself? You're in danger if you think like that." The black-robed old man fell silent for a moment before he smiled, "Young Master Yi, you must be joking." Yi Xian smiled, and then he gazed at the profound god world's lord, "Aren't you going to deal with this threat?" The profound god world's lord's expression was calm. The black-robed elder turned to look at the realm lord of the profound god realm. "Realm lord, I'm sorry." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the surroundings. In the next moment, a white-haired old man appeared not too far away from the black-robed old man. Ancient God Realm. Seeing this white-haired elder, the black-robed elder's eyes narrowed and were filled with shock. He's my second senior brother. He's not in the profound God Realm, so it's normal that you've never met him. Second brother. At the side, Yi Xian's chest ached as he listened. Did this digger have a senior brother? The white-haired old man looked at the black-robed old man. "You really changed sides after being duped a little. Tell me, how did you manage to reach the ancient god realm with that kind of brain of yours?" The black-robed old man's expression was somewhat unsightly. At this moment, he was starting to panic. Although he had used a deity to reach the ancient god realm, he knew that it was equivalent to using a secret technique. There was no way he could compete with a real ancient god realm expert. The realm lord suddenly said, "Su Mu, I'll give you one more chance. If you kill Yi Xian now, I'll pretend that nothing happened." The black-robed old man called Su Mu's face sank. No one knew what he was thinking. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Senior Su Mu, you have no way out now. If it was before, they might not really kill you if you're not a threat to them. But now, you're a threat to them. Do you think they'll really let you go?" Saying that, he smiled. "Since it's come to this, why don't you give it a try? Compared to them, I should be more trustworthy, right?" Su Mu looked at Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian was still covered in blood, his expression was sincere. There was no hypocrisy at all. In the distance, the realm lord of the profound god realm chuckled. "Su Mu, we have two ancient god realm experts on our side. If you choose him," Yi Xian suddenly said, "why do you think there's no one behind me?" Hearing that, the realm lord of the profound god realm was stunned. Su Mu was also stunned. Yi Xian smiled faintly. One had to admit that his smile was a little creepy. After all, he was currently in the state where his bloodline was activated. His whole body was covered in blood. Therefore, his smile was not just creepy. Yi Xian said, "Realm Lord, do you think there's no ancient god realm expert behind me?" The realm lord of the profound god realm looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian looked at Su Mu and smiled, "My people will arrive in half an hour." Su Mu asked in a deep voice, "How many?" Yi Xian said with a smile, 5 ancient god realm warriors. 5 ancient god realm experts." Su Mu was stunned when he heard that. 5? The realm lord of the profound god realm suddenly sneered, 5 ancient god realm experts? Are you kidding me? Yi Xian said indifferently, "Even Dedeabi can follow me. What else is impossible?" The realm lord of the profound god realm stared at Yi Xian. "I don't believe it." Yi Xian smiled and looked at Su Mu, "Senior Su Mu, you can help me block this white-haired old man. As for the realm lord of the profound god realm, I will deal with him." The white-haired old man glanced at Yi Xian, then looked at Su Mu. Su Mu suddenly said, "Stop talking. I will follow young Master Yi. In the end, he still decided to follow Yi Xian. As Yi Xian said, if the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm killed Yi Xian, he would definitely not let him go. After all, what he did just now was equivalent to betrayal. If he was in Yi Xian's shoes, he would not let someone who had betrayed him go as well. Moreover, after obtaining Dedeabi, he realized that he had severely underestimated Dedeabi. In other words, he had severely underestimated Yi Xian. A young man like him who had Dedeabi as his follower was definitely not an ordinary person. Therefore, he decided to take a gamble. Moreover, didn't young Master Yi say that 5 ancient God Realm experts were rushing over? 5 ancient God Realm experts were rushing over. 5 ancient God Realm experts. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard Su Mu's words, and he suddenly vanished on the spot, heading straight for Yi Xian. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yi Xian first. Meanwhile, Su Mu suddenly roared furiously, and then he charged at the white-haired old man. Yi Xian glanced at the two of them, then looked at the last ancient God Realm expert beside the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm. Are you still not leaving? Once we recover from our injuries, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. I'm leaving. The last ancient God Realm expert didn't waste any time, and he turned around and vanished into the horizon. The Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm stared fixedly at Yi Xian. I have to say, you're really amazing. Relying on your silver tongue, you tricked 5 ancient God Realm experts by my side, and you even made one of them work for you. Amazing. Yi Xian paid no attention to the Realm Lord, and he slowly closed his eyes. Recuperate. He had to recuperate as soon as possible because he noticed that Su Mu wasn't a match for the white-haired old man. Su Mu's strength was a little exaggerated. Moreover, although he could use Dedeabi to improve his cultivation, he couldn't directly utilize Dedeabi in battle. So, he naturally had to hold back to guard against the white-haired old man. He wouldn't completely trust the white-haired old man. Seeing that Yi Xian was recuperating, the Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm also started to recuperate, and his body gradually recovered. However, Yi Xian's recovery was even faster. Yi Xian had the undying bloodline and the medicinal pellets Yang Nianxue had given him. Therefore, in terms of recuperation, not many could compare to him. Seeing that Yi Xian's injuries were recovering so quickly, the Realm Lord's expression turned ugly. He knew that it wouldn't be long before Yi Xian completely recovered, and at that time, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous to him. Moreover, he noticed that Yi Xian's aura was still growing stronger. Powerful. Bloodline power. The bloodline power was still increasing Yi Xian's strength. After a moment of silence, the Realm Lord suddenly opened his right hand, and a token flew out from his hand and disappeared into the endless starry sky. In the distance, Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the Realm Lord with a slight frown. You're still calling for help? The Realm Lord asked. Can't I? Yi Xian said solemnly, you're going a little overboard. The Realm Lord said sarcastically, overboard? In this era, who would fight you alone? Yi Xian was silent. That was simply unethical. The Realm Lord stared at Yi Xian. No matter who is behind you, you must die today. I, Xian Tian, said it. In the distance, Yi Xian was silent. Was it time for him to call for help? If this went on, there would be more and more people calling for help, and he wouldn't be able to handle it. At this time, the Realm Lord suddenly laughed. You seem to be afraid. Yi Xian glanced at the Realm Lord. You talk too much nonsense. The Realm Lord was about to speak when a sword suddenly appeared in front of the Realm Lord's brow. The Realm Lord of the Profound God Realm narrowed his eyes and punched out. Rumble. With a loud explosion, Yi Xian's sword light instantly shattered. At this time, he suddenly rushed in front of Xian Tian and slashed down with his sword. A wisp of difficulty flashed through Xian Tian's eyes, and he punched forward. Rumble. Both of them retreated at the same time, and this time, both of them retreated by over 3 kilometers. In the distance, as soon as Yi Xian stopped, a wisp of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but it didn't take long for him to absorb the blood. Yi Xian took a deep breath and glanced to his right. At this moment, Sumu couldn't hold on any longer. Yi Xian's face sank. He looked at the Realm Lord and was about to attack when the Realm Lord suddenly laughed. "You're getting impatient." "Huh, you're getting impatient. Earlier, you said that there were 5 ancient God Realm experts that came. You're simply bluffing." He narrowed his eyes slightly. "Are you an abandoned pawn of some power? After fighting for so long, none of the people behind you have shown up. I can't think of any other reason besides you being an abandoned pawn." In the distance, Yi Xian's expression was calm. He opened his palm, and a sword silently condensed there. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared behind him. Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly turned around and blocked it with his sword. Rumble. Yi Xian retreated explosively for over 30 kilometers. As soon as he stopped moving, the blood-red sword in his hand and his body were instantly obliterated, and his soul actually dimmed like a wisp of smoke. He hadn't recovered from his injuries just now, and now he was attacked by an extraordinary expert. So, he was naturally unable to resist it. An old man stood where he stood just now. The old man had shoulder-length hair, a gloomy gaze, and a terrifying aura. Another ancient God Realm expert. Meanwhile, Xian Tian smiled. "Allow me to introduce myself. This is my eldest senior brother, Ku Rong. He's also an ancient God Realm expert." As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. "You said that your people would arrive in an hour. Now, an hour has passed. Where are your people?" Yi Xian grinned, and then he wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth. "You're right, I don't have anyone. Isn't your father human?" Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded by Yi Xian's ears. In the next moment, the space beside Yi Xian split apart, and then a man in a green robe walked out slowly. Yi Xian was stunned. Xian Tian glanced at the swordsman and sneered, "Just one? Just one? Who are you looking down on?" Chapter 23-34. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the green-robed man. He did not expect his father to come. However, it was not his real body. Obviously, his real body was very far away. Of course, even then, he was still slightly surprised. The green-robed man sized up Yi Xian and smiled. "You look a little miserable." Yi Xian grinned and blood flowed out slowly. "Luckily, you're not dead." The green-robed man smiled. "Don't be angry. I was in a much worse state than you were back then." Yi Xian immediately asked, "So, you want your son to be in a worse state than you, right?" The green-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian asked again. "Of course, I can't blame you. After all, I caused this trouble. I can understand that I have to clean up my own mess." The green-robed man shook his head and smiled. "I know you're angry, but you have to understand me. Yi Xian suddenly interrupted the green-robed man. "Can we be more sincere and less deceitful?" The green-robed man's expression froze and he swallowed the words he wanted to say. At this moment, Xian Tian's eldest senior brother suddenly said coldly, "Are you done talking?" The green-robed man turned to look at the eldest senior brother. "Do you have anything to say?" The eldest senior brother looked at the green-robed man coldly. "Yes." Chi. A sword suddenly pierced through the eldest senior brother's forehead. Boom. In an instant, the eldest senior brother was nailed to the spot and could not move at all. Everyone present was petrified. The green-robed man looked at the dumbfounded eldest senior brother. "Anything else?" The eldest senior brother was about to speak, but he disappeared without a trace in the next moment. He was wiped out. The green-robed man frowned slightly. So weak? I didn't even use 5% of my strength, and you're gone. That's it? Yi Xian was speechless. Xian Tian looked at the green-robed man in terror and said with a trembling voice, Who are you? The green-robed man pointed at Yi Xian and smiled. Can't you tell? I'm his father. Yi Xian was speechless. Xian Tian's face was pale and his entire body was trembling. Instant kill. Killing an ancient god in an instant? This was outrageous. This scene had overturned Xian Tian's understanding. Because in his opinion, this was simply impossible. However, this was the truth, and it was simply insane. On the other side, Su Mu and second senior brother Xian Tian stopped as well. At this moment, their faces were filled with shock. Instantly killing an ancient god? This was simply abnormal. Of course, Su Mu was overjoyed after his initial shock. He was a little panicked in the beginning, especially when he saw the Dark Heaven sect's eldest senior brother. He was on the verge of death. He was on the verge of despair. However, he didn't expect Yi Xian's father to show up. Moreover, it was so terrifying. It was a complete turnaround. Su Mu couldn't help but burst into laughter. His laughter was very crazy. At this moment, the azure-robed man looked at Su Mu. Su Mu was scared out of his wits and immediately said, Young Master Yi. Yi Xian immediately said, He's with me. The azure-robed man was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he smiled embarrassedly, I'm sorry. You don't look like a good person. I almost killed you in an instant. Su Mu, the azure-robed man turned to look at Yi Xian helplessly. Look, my clone came here from countless starfields just to kill a few ants. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Have you ever thought that they are ants to me? The azure-robed man fell silent. He really hadn't thought about this. Yi Xian continued, You might not have thought about it, but Xiao Ta told me that you were very extreme in the past. You were extreme and especially chauvinistic. As he spoke, he shook his head. Xiao Ta is really right. Xiao Ta, the azure-robed man frowned slightly, it said that. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian shook his head inside. He didn't speak anymore, and his expression was a little gloomy and miserable. The azure-robed man hesitated for a moment. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, Xian Tian's second senior brother suddenly said with a trembling voice, You. The azure-robed man suddenly turned around and slashed with his sword. Boom! That second senior brother disappeared on the spot. He was completely erased. Xian Tian, Su Mu's expression also froze at this moment. He also trembled. Why does young Master Ye's father look like a bad person? The azure-robed man was expressionless. We are talking. Why are you interrupting? Second senior brother, who had already passed away, the azure-robed man looked at Yi Xian and sighed softly, I do owe you something. I have to admit that. However, Tianming and your mother dote on you so much. If I also dote on you, do you think it's really a good thing for you? Yi Xian was silent. The azure-robed man continued, It's not that I don't care about you, but I really don't want you to become a complete second generation. Now, you've walked out of your own path of the sword, and you have a brand new goal. This is extremely good. It can be said that your sword Dao is now on the right track. As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, The mortal world is like a whetstone, and it's very good at tempering you. Including this time, although you were beaten up badly, I believe that after this battle, you must have gained a lot, right? Father didn't lie to you, right? Yi Xian nodded, yes. The azure-robed man said again, How can you achieve Dao without going through great hardship? This sentence does make some sense. Most of the time, hardship are the best to train the human heart. The human heart is the heart of the sword. The more tenacious your heart is, the sharper your sword will be. I let you suffer not because I was once left to fend for myself, but because my heart was twisted, I let you go. Father's ultimate goal is for you to become a talented person. Can you understand Father's painstaking efforts? Yi Xian glanced at the azure-robed man. Are you trying to lie to me? The azure-robed man said seriously, then do you think what I said makes sense? Yi Xian nodded. I admit that what you said makes sense. The azure-robed man smiled slightly and felt very gratified. You're different after all. You're sensible. Very good. Yi Xian suddenly said, then do you think that you're qualified as a father? The azure-robed man's expression froze. This fellow actually wasn't tricked. Yi Xian continued, Father, I didn't say that it's wrong of you to fend for yourself to fend for yourself. What I'm more angry about is that as a father, you've always had no sense of existence in my heart. Do you think that's your fault or mine? Tell me. The azure-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian continued, Father, do you think it's normal for a person to be without a father for 18 years? The azure-robed man fell silent. Yi Xian went on, my previous enemies have always been abnormal. They were abnormal in all kinds of ways. Dad, do you know? No, you don't. You only know that I can't beat them, but you've never cared about why I can't beat them. Moreover, you've always liked to impose your views on me, just like those students in the secular world. Their parents constantly ask them to become the kind of person their parents want them to be when they're very young. As he spoke, he shook his head slightly. Father, you fended for yourself because you want me to become a powerful person like you. That's not wrong. But later on, you constantly imposed your views on me and then asked me to become a person like you. Have you ever thought about it? I'm not you. In this world, there's only one azure-robed Swordmaster, there won't be a second one. The azure-robed man sighed softly. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but the azure-robed man suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. Then, he placed the spatial ring in Yi Xian's hand. Father understands. Don't say any more. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial ring, and there were actually 100 million universe veins in the spatial ring. How extravagant. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, and his heartbeat sped up. The azure-robed man suddenly took out an ancient book and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. This book is almost 10 times more powerful than the Void/Sword. It was specially created by Father and your big brother for you. Keep it well. Yi Xian blinked and hurriedly put the ancient book away. The azure-robed man sighed softly. Father does owe you. Can you forgive Father? As he spoke, he took out a black box, but he didn't give it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian immediately said, Father, what are you talking about? Why do we talk about forgiveness between father and son? Don't say such hurtful words in the future. I don't like it. The azure-robed man blinked. You're really not angry? Yi Xian glanced at the black box, and then he said seriously, I'm not angry. I've never been angry. The azure-robed man sighed softly. You said that I didn't accompany you when you were young. Alas, I'm ashamed. Father is ashamed. Yi Xian hurriedly said, it's not too late to make it up to you now. The azure-robed man thought for a moment, and then he nodded. How? Yi Xian immediately said, material compensation. The azure-robed man was speechless. Su Mu was dumbfounded. Are these father and son, really father and son? Su Mu's expression was extremely unsightly. He naturally wanted to flee, but he didn't dare. He knew that he would definitely die if he moved. The azure-robed man was truly too terrifying. In the distance, the azure-robed man suddenly passed the box in his hand to Yi Xian. This is for you. Yi Xian blinked. What is it? The azure-robed man laughed heartily. A very good thing. It's very suitable for you. Of course, it'll be suitable for you in the future as well. Yi Xian nodded. He was looking forward to it. After all, his father was very generous this time. Yi Xian was about to open the box when he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the azure-robed man and smiled. Father, if you're free in the future, come visit me more often and bring something over. It'll be beneficial to our relationship. The azure-robed man's face instantly darkened. Chapter 23:35. The green-clothed man shook his head with a smile when he saw the excitement on Yi Xian's face. At this moment, he suddenly realized that this fellow was still like a child. Of course, he felt even more guilty and ashamed. He really had neglected Yi Xian earlier. It wasn't wrong to leave him alone, but it shouldn't be done completely. Father and son still needed to communicate. Leaving him alone was equivalent to letting the little fellow walk the same path he had once taken, and he knew very well what it felt like to not have a father. As if he'd thought of something, the green-clothed man turned to look at Xian Tian. Xian Tian's face was pale, and he'd lost all will to resist. How could he resist? This green-clothed man killed ancient god realm experts like he was slaughtering chickens, so how could he resist? Xian Tian hesitated for a moment and said, "Can I surrender?" In the end, he didn't choose to be stubborn. Stubbornness was tantamount to death. He didn't want to die right now, and perhaps he would have a chance to live if he surrendered. The green-clothed man grinned, and then he turned to look at Yi Xian. "You decide." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Xian Tian, do you want to live?" Xian Tian immediately bowed deeply. "Please spare my life, young Master Yi." Dignity? Backbone? Living was the best. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "What do I get from sparing your life?" Xian Tian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, wait a moment." As he spoke, he took out a transmission talisman and crushed it. It didn't take long for an old man at the ancient god realm to appear here, and he hurriedly brought a spatial ring over to Xian Tian. Xian Tian took the spatial ring, and then he took out another spatial ring and passed both of them respectfully to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial rings, and there were a total of 80 million universe veins within them. Besides that, there were some divine treasures. Xian Tian said respectfully, "Young Master Yi, all the treasures of my profound god world are in here." Yi Xian put the spatial rings away and grinned, "All right." Xian Tian hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, are you really not going to kill me?" Yi Xian nodded, "No." Xian Tian was puzzled. "Why?" Yi Xian asked, "Do you want me to kill you?" Xian Tian quickly said, "Of course not." As he spoke, he quickly bowed deeply, "Thank you, young Master Yi, for sparing my life." Yi Xian glanced at Xian Tian and smiled. He naturally had his reasons for not killing Xian Tian. If he kept him alive, he would have more opportunities to act tough in the future. Revenge? He wasn't afraid at all. After seeing his father's terrifying strength, if the other party still wanted to take revenge, then he could only give him a thumbs up. Even if Tian Yi was reborn, he wouldn't do such a stupid thing. At this moment, as if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the green-clothed man and said, "Dad, let's have a spar. Let's exchange pointers." The green-clothed man was slightly startled, and then he smiled and said, "Are you sure?" Yi Xian nodded. He had always wanted to have a real fight. Of course, he also wanted to test his father's strength. He wanted to see how big the gap between him and his father was. The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Sure." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "You have to lower your cultivation level." The green-clothed man shook his head and said, "I don't have a cultivation level." Yi Xian was speechless. The green-clothed man smiled and said, "But don't worry. This avatar will seal a portion of its strength to reach your current level." Yi Xian nodded and said, all right. I'll heal my injuries first. As he spoke, he sat down cross-legged and was about to heal his injuries. Meanwhile, the green-clothed man suddenly opened his palm and an elixir floated slowly to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was curious and asked, "What's this?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Just eat it." Why ask so many questions? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he consumed it. As soon as he did, a terrifying energy suddenly swept out from his body. Bang! In an instant, Yi Xian's soul recovered at an extremely terrifying speed. In less than a few breaths of time, his soul had completely recovered. Moreover, his body was swiftly being reconstructed. In less than 10 breaths of time, Yi Xian's soul and body had completely recovered, and his condition was even better than when he was at his peak. Yi Xian was stunned. Su Mu and Xian Tian were stunned as well. He recovered just like that? Yi Xian looked at the green-clothed man in disbelief and said, "Dad, what kind of elixir is this?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Bao, refined the ancient god elixir." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Can you give me a few more? I'll keep them as a backup." The green-clothed man laughed and was about to refuse, but he seemed to have thought of something and shook his head with a smile. After that, he took out a white jade bottle and passed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly took the white jade bottle and there were 5 ancient god elixirs within it. Yi Xian grinned and said, "Dad, you're a good friend." The green-clothed man roared with laughter. Yi Xian opened his palm, and then a strand of sword intent suddenly condensed into a sword that floated above his palm. Yi Xian gazed at the green-clothed man and said, "Dad, bring it on." The green-clothed man nodded and said, "You attack first." Yi Xian didn't waste his breath at all and just stabbed with his sword. The energy of the mortal world and sword intent of the mortal world. Void slash. He'd utilized his full strength in this strike. His dad wasn't someone that Xian Tian and the others could compare to. Even if it was only a clone and a portion of his strength was sealed. The green-clothed man's expression was calm as water when facing this terrifying strike from Yi Xian, and he suddenly stabbed with his sword when Yi Xian's sword arrived in front of him. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated over 30 kilometers away along with his sword. When he stopped, the sword in his hand that was condensed from sword intent was instantly shattered and obliterated. Yi Xian was stunned. Was his human sword principle that weak? The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Your sword principle isn't bad, but do you know what's the biggest flaw of your sword principle?" Yi Xian looked at the green-clothed man and said, "Please enlighten me, Dad." The green-clothed man nodded and said, "The sword principle is a kind of belief." What is your belief? The human world, the secular world of mortals. The secular world of mortals is your foundation, but you've experienced too little. You haven't fully comprehended the emotions and desires of the human world. Moreover, it's not enough to comprehend the emotions and desires of the human world. Your sword principle needs to encompass all things in the universe, and to achieve this, it's not something that can be achieved in a short period of time. Moreover, at this point, he paused for a moment and said, "You have another flaw, and it should be your biggest flaw right now." Yi Xian quickly asked, "What flaw?" The green-clothed man smiled and said, "Your sword principle is the sword principle of the human world, and you need the support of the human world's power. However, your human world's power is very weak now. Do you know why?" Yi Xian shook his head. The man in green said, "Because there are very, very few people who believe in you." Yi Xian frowned. "Faith?" The blue-clothed man nodded. "Yes, faith. The faith of all living beings is the power of your world." Yi Xian frowned. The azure-robed man smiled and said, "Don't you think it's a bit dependent on external forces? Or are you saying that you don't like to play tricks?" Yi Xian nodded. "Both." The green-robed man shook his head, "Your thinking is wrong. Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man, and the green-robed man said softly, "What was your original intention in establishing the academy?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "To establish a heart for the universe, to establish a life for all living beings, to continue learning for the saints of the past, to establish peace for all ages." The azure-robed man nodded. "If you can really do what you said, then all the living beings in this endless universe will have faith in you. The more sincere their faith is, the stronger your human realm sword Dao will be." Of course, the premise was that what you did was sincere from the heart, without the slightest bit of falsehood. You have feelings for everything. You have feelings for the world and the universe. All the living beings in the universe will naturally allow you to comprehend greater power. As he spoke, he paused for a moment and said, "The sword Dao of the mortal world is based on the living beings of the world. Your sword Dao is even more difficult to traverse than our sword Dao. Because your sword Dao is too ambitious. Changing the world is much harder than destroying it. Even Father and Tianming can't change the world because the hardest thing to change is the human heart. If you want to change the universe, you have to change their thoughts and change their hearts. Your path will be harder than ours." Yi Xian looked straight at the green-robed man. "What if I succeed?" The green-robed man suddenly held his sword and gently knocked on Yi Xian's head. "You can't think like that." Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man asked, "You have to establish a heart for the universe, establish a life for all living beings, continue learning for the saints of the past, and establish peace for all ages. Are you thinking of this for all living beings in this universe, or do you want to use all living beings to become stronger?" Yi Xian was stunned. The green-robed man said with a smile, "We swordsmen cultivate our hearts." "Why do we cultivate our hearts?" "Because the human heart is fickle, so we need to constantly cultivate our hearts and then subdue them. The original intention of your sword Dao is to change this boundless universe, so go ahead and do it. However, if you do it with a selfish heart, it's not impossible, but it'll be different. Because to a certain extent, you're making use of all living things in this boundless universe. When that time comes, you will really be fooling them. Moreover, with this mentality, if there is a conflict between you and all living beings in the universe in the future, you will not hesitate to sacrifice this endless universe to help yourself." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "I understand." The green-robed man said with a smile, "Our original intention does not change. This is what we swordsmen always say, but it's actually very difficult to do it." As he said that, he gently patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "You're already doing very well now. You're no longer impetuous and vicious, and you know how to do things slowly. Compared to before, you're much, much better. What you need now is more experience, then settle yourself, change yourself, and finally change the entire universe." After a long silence, Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." The green-robed man said with a smile, "It's good that you understand." Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man and said in a deep voice, "Father, I know that it's very difficult to change the universe, but I will do my best. One day, I will achieve what I said and make this universe different." The green-robed man nodded. He gently rubbed Yi Xian's head and said with a smile, "Just do it, don't worry too much. Your father will always be behind you." Xian Tian was speechless. P.S. If I didn't keep you in suspense today, would you have praised me? Chapter 2336. A backer? Yi Xian was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then he smiled, "Father, thank you." The green-clothed man roared with laughter, "There's no need for thanks between father and son." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, "I have to go." Yi Xian was quite curious, "Father, where are you and big brother right now?" The green-clothed man thought for a moment and said, "It's very far away. With your current strength, you can't come into contact with that place. But I believe that it won't take long for you to get there." As he spoke, he suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared there. The spatial ring was slightly strange. It was shaped like a sword, and it was blood red. The green-clothed man passed the spatial ring to Yi Xian. For you. Yi Xian took the spatial ring and was quite curious. What's this? The green-clothed man smiled. A keepsake. You'll need it in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, his clone gradually became illusory. Yi Xian spoke solemnly. Father, are you leaving? The green-clothed man nodded, and then he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his palm, and the sword that he'd given to Yi Xian appeared in his hand. He smiled. Looks like you haven't noticed what's special about this sword. No, the current you basically doesn't need to use external objects anymore. However, there's no need to intentionally avoid using external objects. As he spoke, he pressed his fingers together and flicked the sword lightly. Bang! The sword trembled violently. In the next moment, a terrifying ray of light suddenly erupted from the sword. The green-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. Blood. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he flicked his finger and a drop of blood essence floated onto the sword. As soon as the drop of blood came into contact with the sword, the entire sword instantly seemed as if it had come alive, and it emanated an extremely terrifying sword howl. Immediately after that, the entire sword transformed into a blood-red sword. Yi Xian was astounded. This. The azure-robed man smiled and said, Zhangjian, a sword that once slaughtered countless creatures. Later on, when I encountered it, I sealed it. I originally thought that you would be able to awaken it, but I didn't expect that you've been reading every day recently, and your personality has changed greatly. This sword has no feelings for you. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Yi Xian glanced at the blood-red sword in the green-robed man's hand and shook his head with a smile. He did not expect this ordinary-looking sword to be a sword of slaughter. The green-robed man handed the sword to Yi Xian. I've still sealed part of this sword's power. If you want to unseal it in the future, it's up to you. Previously, I didn't dare to unseal it for you because I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to control it. But now, your temperament has improved a lot. You should have no problem facing this sword. Yi Xian blinked. Is this sword strong? The green-robed man laughed and said, if you activate your bloodline and use this sword, you will be pleasantly surprised. Yi Xian smiled and said, all right. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the burial sword. As soon as the burial sword came into contact with it, Yi Xian's body instantly trembled. In the next moment, a boundless sea of blood actually appeared in his mind. At the same time, strands of terrifying murderous intent and evil qi instantly surged into his sea of consciousness. Yi Xian frowned slightly. In the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a sea of blood in his eyes. The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Gradually, the sea of blood in Yi Xian's eyes faded away, and Yi Xian's expression returned to normal. He had suppressed the evil qi and murderous intent. The green-robed man grinned. All right. Yi Xian looked at the green-robed man. Father, take care. The green-robed man laughed heartily. Little fellow, do your best. You did well this time. Huh. As he laughed heartily, the green-robed man vanished completely. Xian Tian's expression instantly eased up when he saw the green-robed man vanish. Because the pressure he felt from the green-robed man was truly too strong. As soon as he left, he instantly felt as if a few 100,000 mountains had moved away from him. Meanwhile, Sumu walked over slowly to Yi Xian, and he passed the Daebi to Yi Xian and said respectfully, Young Master Yi, please keep it well. Yi Xian took the Daebi and smiled, did you comprehend anything? Sumu hurriedly nodded, it's quite deep. It won't take long for me to attain the ancient god realm. Of course, the precondition is that I have money. Yi Xian blinked, how much money? Sumu hesitated for a moment and said, at least 50 million universe veins, and it might even be more, 50 million universe veins. A wisp of bitterness arose on the corners of Su Mu's mouth when he spoke up to this point. The amount of money required to advance from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm was truly too terrifying. It was terrifying to the point that even an expert like him felt slightly helpless. I can't just rob someone, right? Even if I want to rob someone, I have to rob a great power. However, practically every great power has an ancient god realm expert, so robbing them is equivalent to robbing with one's life. If I don't rob someone and rely on myself to slowly earn it, how long would that take? That's normal. After all, ancient god realm experts are extremely rare now. Besides money, great fortuitous encounters are required as well. He already has great fortuitous encounters, and what he lacks now is money. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated over to Su Mu. There were exactly 50 million universe veins within the spatial ring. Su Mu was stunned. Young Master Yi, what's this? Yi Xian smiled, I won't be bashful anymore. I've established an academy, and it's currently lacking manpower. I want to recruit you to be a revered elder of my Guanxian Academy. You won't be involved in the academy's affairs and will only be tasked with protecting it. Are you willing? Su Mu immediately bowed deeply, I'm willing, I'm willing. Of course he was willing. If he could hug onto Yi Xian's thigh, then meteoric success would be just around the corner. No, he was already meteoric success. Yi Xian smiled and said, go cultivate first. Come find me after you've broken through. Su Mu bowed deeply again, definitely. After he finished speaking, he left. Yi Xian fell silent. His father gave him 100 million universe veins earlier, along with the 80 million that Xian Tian gave him, and the tens of millions he already had, he had around 200 million universe veins. But now, he had to give away 50 million at once. Needless to say, it was quite painful. However, if he could obtain an ancient god realm expert, then it would be extremely worth it. Currently, ancient god realm experts were extremely rare, and he would be more at ease if Guanxian Academy had an ancient god realm expert protecting it. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Xian Tian. Xian Tian's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly bowed, Young Master Yi, what instructions do you have for me? Yi Xian smiled, I don't have any instructions. You can leave. Xian Tian was stunned, and then he bowed slightly and vanished on the spot. No one knew what Yi Xian was thinking as he watched Xian Tian vanish into the distance. After a while, Yi Xian turned and left. The people outside didn't know what happened in the starry sky, so many people were still frantically looking for Yi Xian. Xian Tian Divine Realm. After Xian Tian returned to Xian Tian Divine Realm, he locked himself in his room. Fear. Even now, he still felt fear. The green-clothed man had instantly annihilated 2 ancient god realm experts in an instant with ease. Moreover, it was only a clone of his. This was truly unbelievable. At this moment, he finally recognized himself. Was the ancient god realm very strong? Before this, he felt that it was very, very strong, an existence at the top of the pyramid of the world. But now, he felt that the ancient god realm was just a fart. Not even a fart. At this moment, an elder appeared at the door and said excitedly, Realm Lord, we have found news of Yi Xian. Yi Xian has returned to the Xingu clan. Our people have already gone to the Xingu clan to kill him. Ah! Suddenly, the entire hall exploded into pieces, and the old man who spoke was blasted thousands of meters away. After Xian Tian came out, he looked at the elder and said with a trembling voice, Damn it, get them back. The elder was stunned. At this moment, Xian Tian suddenly roared, Where did they go? Tell me, or I will kill you. The elder pointed to the right, and Xian Tian disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, the end of the horizon cracked, and a voice suddenly came from afar, "Pass down my order, no one from the Xiantian divine realm is allowed to cause trouble for young Master Yi. Anyone who disobeys will be killed." The elder. When Yi Xian returned to the Shingu clan, he was stunned when he saw Gu Han. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You didn't expect me to come back alive, did you?" Gu Han nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian smiled, "I am here to bid farewell to you. I am going back to Guanxian Academy." Gu Han glanced at Yi Xian, "All right." The current her naturally did not dare to let Yi Xian represent the Shingu clan to compete with the Imperial Wilderness Celestial clan. Not to mention the people behind Yi Xian's current strength was not something the immortal ancient Celestial clan could resist. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the deity slowly floated to Gu Han, "Hold the brush." Gu Han was stunned, and then she held the brush. In the next moment, she was directly raised to the ancient god realm by the deity. Gu Han's pupils shrank, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Yi Xian said, "Feel it carefully." Gu Han slowly closed her eyes. About an hour later, Gu Han opened her eyes. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the deity flew back into his hand. He smiled, "Patriarch, thank you for saving me that day. Today, we are even. See you again." With that, he turned and left. Gu Han suddenly said, "It can also be raised to the ancient god realm, right?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." With that, he disappeared into the starry sky. Gu Han was stunned. She actually still wanted to experience the ancient god realm, because she knew that it was a chance to change her fate. Unfortunately, she could not speak. Just as Yi Xian said, she helped Yi Xian once, and Yi Xian helped her once, so they were even. At this moment, she suddenly regretted it. If she did not leave that day, after a long time, Gu Han sighed, and turned to leave. In a certain corner, an unremarkable little girl looked at the disappearing sword light, and her eyes gradually turned from blank to determined. After a long time, she softly said, "Guanxian Academy. Imperial Wilderness Celestial Clan." An old man quickly walked into the hall, and said excitedly, "Patriarch, we have found Yi Xian. Yi Xian has just left the Shingu clan." Di Yuan was silent for a moment, and said, "Inform the profound God world immediately." With that, he slowly closed his eyes, "Little friend Yi, you cannot blame me." Chapter 2337. Yi Xian didn't return to the Guanxuan Academy in the world of gods. Instead, he went to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in the Immortal World. When Yi Xian arrived, the president of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, Su Tian, hurriedly came out to welcome him. He bowed deeply to Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi." Others didn't know what had happened, but he knew that two ancient god realm experts had fallen in the profound god world. But Yi Xian was still alive. Even an idiot would know what was going on. Yi Xian smiled. "Find me a place to cultivate. I'm going into closed-door cultivation." Su Tian hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, follow me." As he spoke, he brought Yi Xian to an unknown starry sky. Su Tian glanced around and said, "Young Master Yi, this is the best place to cultivate. It's extremely quiet." Yi Xian nodded. Su Tian bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, feel free to let me know if you need anything." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly retreated. After Su Tian left, Yi Xian glanced around before sitting down cross-legged. He opened his palm, and the ancient book that his father gave him appeared in his hand. "A sword technique that father and big brother created together for me?" Needless to say, Yi Xian was extremely curious. As soon as Yi Xian opened the ancient book, a ray of sword light suddenly shot into the space between his brows. Bang! In an instant, countless pieces of information surged into Yi Xian's mind. Instant invincibility. Once it's executed, I'll immediately escape from the current universe. In an instant, I'll be immune to all the energy of the universe. Fate and karma can't be attached to me, and I'll devour all Grand Tao techniques. With a single thought, I'll be able to lock the soul with a single sword strike. In this instant, I'm invincible. In this instant, I'm invincible? Yi Xian was stunned. In next to no time, Yi Xian's blood was boiling. Awesome! At this moment, he just wanted to roar. Once this sword technique was executed, he would be able to escape from the current universe. Karma and fate couldn't be attached to him, and he would devour all Grand Tao techniques. Yi Xian was extremely excited. This was even more ferocious than Void Slash. No wonder his father and big brother worked together to create it for him. One word, ferocious. 2 words, so fierce. Without any nonsense, Yi Xian immediately began his research. But very soon, he became numb. Because he discovered that cultivating this sword skill required an extremely large amount of money, because cultivating this sword skill required the support of an enormous amount of spiritual energy, because only with sufficient spiritual energy would he be able to break through the current universe and jump out. How much spiritual energy was needed? He had just burned 1,000,000 universe veins, but it was like a stone falling into the ocean. There was no movement at all. It wasn't enough. Holy shit! Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian was naturally unwilling and continued to burn his universe veins. He held the sword in his right hand and closed his eyes. His heart sutra circulated and countless universe veins burned around him. 2 million. 3 million. 4 million. 6 million. When he burned to 10 million universe veins, the sword in his hand suddenly trembled slightly. There was movement. Yi Xian was overjoyed, and he hurriedly circulated the instant of invincibility. In next to no time, a faint sword light appeared around his body, and right at this moment, the universe veins that he had ignited were completely absorbed by his sword. Yi Xian quickly continued to burn his universe veins. At this moment, he couldn't care about anything else. He just wanted to test the power of this sword. Yi Xian crazily burned his universe veins. Under the support of endless universe veins, the sword in Yi Xian's hand trembled violently. At the same time, countless tiny sword lights appeared on his body. These sword lights were like blood vessels. Yi Xian suddenly raised the sword in his hand. At this moment, those tiny sword lights suddenly gathered towards his arm. Soon, countless tiny sword lights followed his arm and entered the sword in his hand. At this moment, he needed even more spiritual energy. Yi Xian didn't hesitate and continued to burn his universe veins. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed forward with his sword and roared, "Open!" Boom! As the sword stabbed out, the spacetime in front of him suddenly split apart. Yi Xian's entire body entered it. In the next moment, he appeared in a space of nothingness. Yi Xian was stunned. The space he was in was nothingness. It wasn't the river of time or the river of time and space. It was like it was independent of the universe. Moreover, he could see the universe he had entered from. Not only that, but from his position, the universe he was in was transparent and illusory. Yi Xian looked at his body. At this moment, there was a thin layer of sword light on his body. It was like scales, extremely dazzling. Invincible? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then he took out Daebi and waved it at his body. Chi! The tip of the brush slashed onto his body. Boom! The tip of the brush shattered and he was completely fine. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment, he laughed crazily. He was truly invincible. At this moment, he was truly an invincible existence. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly looked at the existing universe outside. He slowly closed his eyes and in the next moment, he suddenly pulled out his sword. In that existing universe, 4 afterimages appeared in one place. In the next moment, the 4 afterimages pulled out their swords and slashed. The 4 sword lights converged at one point. Boom! In an instant, that existing universe's starry sky was instantly destroyed. This wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that the force was too strong. The powerful force instantly swept out for millions of miles. In an instant, the endless starry sky above the entire God's world was directly wiped out. Millions of miles of starry sky was destroyed by a single sword. Moreover, the remaining force continuously shook and cracked the starry sky that was millions of miles away. In an instant, it affected more than a dozen universes. At this moment, countless experts were shocked. Which big shot used this sword? Countless people began to investigate, but they found nothing. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly returned to the existing universe. When he returned to the existing universe, his entire body went limp like a puddle of mud. He directly collapsed. After unleashing that sword strike, he immediately collapsed. The power of that sword was far, far stronger than Dadeabi's. His current body wasn't enough to completely withstand it. At this moment, Su Tian appeared. When he saw Yi Xian, Su Tian was shocked. He hurriedly walked in front of Yi Xian and said in a trembling voice, "Young Master Yi." "You?" Yi Xian smiled slightly. "It's fine. I'll rest for a while." After saying that, he just lay down and closed his eyes to rest. He didn't use the medicinal pill that his father gave him. That medicinal pill was too terrifying. It was better to save it for a critical moment in the future. After all, there were only 5 of them. If he used one, there would be one less. After all, his father didn't come every time. Next to him, Su Tian looked at Yi Xian with a face full of shock. He seriously suspected that the sudden wiping out of this part of the starry sky was done by this young Master Yi in front of him. However, was this young Master Yi only at the see-through realm? How could he have such terrifying strength? Su Tian was puzzled. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian's face finally looked much better. He sat up and smiled bitterly. Needless to say, that sword strike was truly too terrifying. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at his spatial ring. When he saw the universe veins in his spatial ring, he was stunned. 30 million universe veins were missing. 30 million. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. In order to execute that sword strike, he'd actually burned 30 million universe veins. Why is it like Qin Guan's sword? Does it rely on recharging? He also thought of something else. When he executed that sword skill just now, he didn't use the power of bloodline, world sword intent, and world power. Otherwise, its power might be even more terrifying. Besides that, he didn't display its true power just now. After all, he was just testing it and didn't use his full strength. In short, that sword strike was quite invincible. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Needless to say, his father was really considerate this time. He gave him money and a sword skill. And a box. With that thought in mind, Yi Xian hurriedly took out the box and sized it up. It was an ordinary box, but he knew that the thing inside was definitely not ordinary. Yi Xian looked at Su Tian, and Su Tian hurriedly said, "Young Master Yi, please go ahead. I'll take my leave." With that, he turned around and left. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "What happened just now? Keep it a secret, understand?" Su Tian was stunned. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Of course." With that, he left. Outside, Su Tian's face was filled with disbelief. The commotion just now was really caused by young Master Yi. It was simply outrageous. Profound God world. Xian Tian sat in the main hall, and there were a few elders kneeling in front of him. They were the elders who had gone after Yi Xian, and he'd just caught them. Needless to say, Xian Tian was really relieved. If he hadn't caught them, and they'd caught up with Yi Xian, wouldn't that be the end of him? In the hall, the few people kneeling were confused. At this moment, Xian Tian suddenly said, "Remember, from today onwards, don't look for young Master Yi. If you meet him, turn around and leave. If you can't avoid it, be more respectful and treat him like your own father." The few of them were puzzled. Xian Tian said angrily, "Don't ask why, just do as I say. It's for your own good. Leave now." The few of them did not dare to say anything else, and they left in a daze. In the hall, Xian Tian leaned against the chair behind him with his eyes closed. He had been living in fear for the past few days, and the green-robed man would appear in his mind every now and then. At this moment, an elder suddenly appeared in the hall, and the elder bowed slightly. "Realm Lord, Di Yuan, the clan leader of the Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe, requests an audience." Xian Tian frowned. "Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe? What does he want?" The elder said in a deep voice, "He said he has something important to report." "Important?" Xian Tian nodded. "Let him in." The elder left, and not long after, Di Yuan walked into the hall. Di Yuan bowed slightly to Xian Tian, and then he went straight to the point. "Realm Lord Xian Tian, let me first say that the Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe has nothing to do with Yi Xian, nothing at all." Xian Tian looked at Di Yuan without saying a word. Di Yuan continued, "Realm Lord Xian Tian, I just found Yi Xian's whereabouts. After he left the ancient immortal clan, he went directly to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. I've already sent people to surround him, and Realm Lord Xian Tian can head there immediately. The Heavenly Emperor Wilderness God Tribe is willing to cooperate fully with Realm Lord Xian Tian to capture Yi Xian." Xian Tian's legs suddenly felt weak. "P.S. I firmly believe that those readers who scold me will get tired of scolding me. Also, why scold me? Without love, how could there be hatred? If they didn't like me, they wouldn't waste time scolding me." When I thought about this, I realized that when I saw those readers scolding me, I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I felt a trace of joy and pride. Look, they scolded me because they liked my book. Life was difficult, and there were many times when one had to look at a problem from a different perspective. Perhaps the result would be different. Chapter 2338. Inside the hall, Xian Tian looked at Di Yuan silently. Di Yuan furrowed his brows when he saw that Xian Tian wasn't speaking. Suddenly, he sensed that something was wrong with the atmosphere and he raised his guard. Di Yuan hesitated for a moment before he said, "Realm Lord?" Xian Tian suddenly said, "You said that you have nothing to do with that young Master Yi?" Di Yuan hurriedly nodded. "That's right. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan has nothing to do with him. My Imperial Desolate Divine Clan is willing to help the profound world." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly changed drastically. "Young Master Yi?" This mystic sky realm lord addressed Yi Xian as Young Master Yi. Right at this moment, Xian Tian spoke abruptly, "It's fine as long as they aren't related at all." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flipped his right hand and pressed it down. In the distance, Di Yuan's expression changed drastically, and he blocked with both hands. Boom! Di Yuan's physical body was shattered, and his soul was gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Di Yuan stared at Xian Tian in disbelief. "Realm Lord Xian Tian, why are you doing this?" Xian Tian stared at Di Yuan and mocked, "You think you're so smart." Di Yuan spoke in a heavy voice, "Mystic Heaven Realm Lord, if you want to kill me, can you let me die knowing the reason behind it?" Xian Tian was expressionless. "Do you know who Young Master Yi is?" "Young Master Yi. Hearing these two words, Di Yuan was stunned. Xian Tian glared at Di Yuan and said angrily, "Someone I cannot afford to offend." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve. Boom! Di Yuan's soul was instantly erased. Xian Tian looked coldly at the spot where Di Yuan had disappeared. Idiot! Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian opened the box. Inside was a small set of armor. It was dark gold in color and about the size of a palm. It emitted a faint light, and it was glossy and mysterious. Seeing this palm-sized armor, Yi Xian frowned. Armor? At this moment, the black armor suddenly transformed into a black light and surged into his glabella. Boom! In an instant, Yi Xian's eyes widened, and two rays of blood-red light shot out from his eyes. Chi-chi! The two beams of bloody light pierced through the river of stars and disappeared into the depths of the boundless starry sky. At the same time, Yi Xian's whole body trembled violently, and the mad demon bloodline in his body was directly activated at this moment. Moreover, the burial sword in his hand was actually trembling violently at this moment as if it was about to be completely activated. Yi Xian was horrified. What the hell? Yi Xian hurriedly began to suppress the power of the bloodline in his body, but he soon discovered that thin scales had appeared all over his body, and on these scales, there was dark blood flowing slowly. His mad demon bloodline was actually unable to suppress this dark blood. Arya's bloodline. At this moment, Yi Xian was certain. This armor must have been made from the scales shed by Arya, and in this armor, there was Arya's blood. Thinking of this, Yi Xian was instantly excited. How terrifying was Arya's armor? Although this armor was Arya's scales after being eliminated, it was absolutely terrifying. Yi Xian looked at the bloodline contained in the armor on his body, and was shocked. No wonder his bloodline could not suppress the power of this bloodline, so it turned out that it was Arya's bloodline. He had to admit that Arya's bloodline was a bit fierce. This was the first time he saw the mad demon bloodline unable to suppress other bloodlines. However, it should be because of him. After all, his mad demon bloodline did not improve much. If it was his father's bloodline, it would definitely be different. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts, and then slowly began to suppress his mad demon bloodline. Under his suppression, the mad demon bloodline gradually calmed down, and Arya's bloodline gradually merged into the armor, and the burial sword also returned to normal. Yi Xian touched the armor on his body, and the first feeling he had was that it was thick. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then took out Dedeabi, and then directly waved the brush on his body. Boom! The tip of the brush slashed out. Boom! A ray of light erupted from Yi Xian's chest, but he was completely unharmed. Nothing happened. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian was stunned at first, and then he laughed. With Arya's armor and his instant invincible sword technique, it would be difficult for him to die. Now, he really wanted to shout, "I'm invincible under 3 swords." However, he still calmed down. I can't shout randomly. In the past, I was often slapped in the face, and I usually can't be handsome for more than 3 days. Although I'm invincible now, I still have to keep a low profile. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and then with a thought, the armor on his body quietly merged into his body. Yi Xian grinned, "This time, Dad is a bit like my real father." The man in green was speechless. Yi Xian put away Dedeabi, then glanced at the scene, smiled slightly, and then turned to leave. It had to be said that the harvest this time was very, very great. After coming out of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yi Xian saw Su Tian, and Su Tian quickly bowed respectfully, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "President Su Tian, I'm leaving." Su Tian smiled, "Welcome young Master Yi next time." Yi Xian nodded, "Take care." With that, he rode on his sword and disappeared into the end of the starry sky. Su Tian looked up at the horizon, and said softly, Di Yuan celestial clan, is gone. He had already received the news of Di Yuan's death, and with Di Yuan's death, there was no doubt that the Di Yuan celestial clan would be swallowed by the surrounding forces. Su Tian sighed softly. This Di Yuan, in the end, still gambled wrong. Yi Xian did not directly return to Universe of Gods, but went to Celestial Treasure World. When he arrived at Celestial Treasure City, he was stunned. At the entrance of Celestial Treasure City, there were hundreds of bloody heads. What happened? Yi Xian frowned slightly. At this moment, Celestial Treasure City's president Xiaolan appeared in front of Yi Xian, and upon seeing Yi Xian, Xiaolan quickly bowed, "Young Master Yi." His attitude was even more respectful than before. Yi Xian pointed at those heads. "These are?" Xiaolan said solemnly, "They are all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts." Yi Xian was slightly startled, then said, "Mystic Sky Divine Realm?" Xiaolan nodded. "I contacted the Pavilion Master previously, but he did not come, but he sent someone." Then, all the heads of Mystic Sky Divine Realms experts of Grotto Profound Realm and above are all placed here. Qin Guan. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He had to say, although Qin Guan's temper was extremely good, the prerequisite was not to provoke her, especially not to break the rules she set. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What about Mystic Sky?" Xiaolan bowed deeply. The Pavilion Master said that since young Master Yi didn't kill him, then there must be a deeper meaning behind it. So, give young Master Yi face, not him. Give me face. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he smiled. Little Guan is really considerate. Little Guan. Xiaolan's eyelids instantly twitched when he heard this. This young Master Ye's relationship with the Pavilion Master really isn't ordinary. Yi Xian smiled. "Are you still holding the auction?" Xiaolan nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian asked, "When?" Xiaolan hesitated. He paused for a moment, then said, "When does young Master Yi think is suitable?" Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said with a smile, "Well, you can make your own arrangements." Xiaolan grinned. "It's convenient for young Master Yi." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "I don't have that much money." Xiaolan glanced at the surroundings, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, do you have any thoughts about the Tao God's ruins?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan said in a low voice, "Young Master Yi, we did some research earlier and discovered that no power can buy this Tao God's ruins. Thus, the Pavilion Master thought of a way, and that is to let everyone buy it together." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Group purchase?" Xiaolan nodded. "Yes. A few powers will buy it together and then share this ruin together." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Are the other powers willing?" Xiaolan nodded. "I'm willing. That's because there isn't a single force that can monopolize these ruins." As he spoke, he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Young Master Yi, when the time comes, we'll directly put you on the list, and you won't have to pay any fees." Yi Xian blinked. "When?" Xiaolan smiled lightly. "We're all on the same side, what's wrong with that?" Yi Xian hurriedly said, "President Xiaolan is considerate. I, Yi Xian, will never forget this favor." Hearing this, Xiaolan was overjoyed. Young Master Yi is too polite. Saying so, he made an inviting gesture. "Young Master Yi, please enter the pavilion. When the auction is over, I'll inform you." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." Under Xiaolan's lead, Yi Xian arrived at the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and Xiaolan arranged for him to stay in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's highest standard room. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. Cultivating. His harvest from the battle with Black Heaven's group was bountiful. That was especially true during his battle with Xianmu. He had learned many things during that exchange. Most importantly, he had used a deity to reach the ancient god realm. Now, his goal was to break through to the ancient god realm. because he felt that the time was right. In the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. With Dadeabi's help, he once again reached the ancient god realm. He carefully comprehended, and at the same time, he began to burn his universe veins. Breaking through to the next realm required a lot of universe veins. Fortunately, he had the 100 million from his father and 80 million from Black Heaven, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to continue cultivating. Just like this, time passed day by day. Roughly 3 days later, Yi Xian's aura suddenly returned to the Grotto Mystic realm, but very quickly, he advanced from the Grotto Mystic realm to the Ancient God realm. This time, his aura gradually stabilized. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. His palms opened, and in an instant, more than 1,000 swords condensed from sword intent appeared around him. Ancient God realm. However, Yi Xian was not the least bit happy. On the contrary, his brows were tightly locked together. Because he discovered that his ancient god realm was very superficial, not stable at all. Although it was the ancient god realm, it was not much different from the demigod realm. Yi Xian fell silent. He knew that he had been a little too impatient. Even with Dadeabi's help, this realm was not something that could be easily broken through. He was too impatient. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Right now, he had to slowly stabilize his realm, and it might take a long time. At this time, Xiaolan suddenly appeared not far from Yi Xian. Xiaolan slightly bowed, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "What's the matter?" Xiaolan nodded, "Young Master Yi, the auction has ended. According to the agreement, you will set off for the Dao God ruins together." Dao God ruins. Chapter 2339. The auction had ended. Yi Xian nodded slightly and stood up. Under Xiaolan's lead, he arrived at a large hall. At this moment, there were already 3 people gathered in the hall, 2 men and 1 woman, all of them relatively young. So young? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. When the 2 men and 1 woman saw Yi Xian, they glanced at him, then retracted their gazes. At this moment, Xiaolan suddenly said, "The 4 of you, this time, only the 4 of you know about the Dao God's secret realm. In other words, the 4 of you will share the Dao God's secret realm. As for what you can obtain from it, it will depend on your own luck." After saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian, then quietly retreated. In the hall, the 4 of them were silent. Yi Xian glanced at the 3 of them. The 3 of them sat a little far away and did not communicate with each other. It was obvious that the 3 of them did not know each other. Yi Xian suddenly smiled, "Everyone, there's no need to be so serious. Next, we might have to work together. Introduce yourselves." "I'll go first. My name is Yi Xian, and I'm from the universe of gods." The 3 of them glanced at Yi Xian, but still did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled, "The 3 of you, with all due respect, this kind of mentality is not good. We haven't even reached the Dao God ruins yet, and you've already started to suspect each other. It can be imagined that once we reach the Dao God ruins, we will definitely fight." After saying that, he paused for a moment, then said, "Is there no danger in the Dao God ruins?" The 3 of them remained silent. Yi Xian smiled, "Moreover, do you all have the confidence to kill the other 3? The 3 of them remained silent. Yi Xian continued, "I think a win-win cooperation is better than being guarded against and suspicious of each other. What do you think?" At this moment, the man on the left suddenly said, "Qin Yu." The man on the right also said, "Zhu Fan." The woman in the middle looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Xiao Yuer." Yi Xian smiled, "Let's set off for the Dao God ruins." After he finished speaking, the 3 of them arrived in the starry sky. Xiaolan appeared in front of Yi Xian once more. Behind him was a starship. Xiaolan smiled lightly, "The 4 of you, the journey to the Dao God ruins is long, so my immortal treasure pavilion has prepared a starship for all of you. This starship can travel through space-time star fields, it can save all of you a lot of time." As he spoke, his gaze was fixed on Yi Xian. Obviously, this starship was prepared for Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Thank you." Xiaolon smiled and said, "You're too courteous. You're too polite." With that, he cupped his fists. "Yi. Everyone, take care." Yi Xian nodded, and the four of them boarded the starship. It started up and disappeared into the depths of space. Xiaolon looked at the distant end of the starry sky and said softly, "His family is so invincible, yet he still has to work hard. What reason does he have not to work hard?" At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian stood on the starship. He was reading an ancient book, and he was engrossed in it. At this moment, a voice came from the side. "What are you reading?" Yi Xian turned to look. The person who had come was Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu wore a light purple dress that reached the ground. There was a white ribbon tied around her waist, which made her slender figure even more graceful. Her facial features were exquisite, and her voice was soft like a spring breeze. Her expression was gentle, and with her large, watery eyes, she was truly a rare beauty. Yi Xian smiled. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Yu suddenly glanced at the ancient book in Yi Xian's hand. She blinked and said, "Romance history?" Yi Xian nodded. "That's right." Xiao Yu smiled slightly. "You like to read love books?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "This is not an ordinary love book. Within love, there is a criticism of the world." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. He glanced at the surroundings and changed the topic. "This starry sky is very beautiful." Xiao Yu nodded slightly. "Indeed." As she spoke, she changed the topic. "Young Master Yi, do you have a good relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "So Miss Xiao is here to inquire about me." Xiao Yu blinked and maintained her smile. "Young Master Yi, you don't mind, right?" Yi Xian smiled lightly. "It's just as Miss Xiao thought. My relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is indeed not bad. However, I'm not one of them." Xiao Yu smiled and said, "Someone who can make President Xiaolon treat him so politely is definitely not an ordinary person." Yi Xian smiled slightly. "I'm just an ordinary person who likes to read." He felt that it was better to speak less of the truth. In any case, no one would believe him even if he said it, and he would be suspected of being pretentious. Keep a low profile. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, shall we join forces?" "Join forces?" Yi Xian's brows slightly furrowed. "What do you mean?" Xiao Yu smiled. "Xiaofan and Qin Yu have already joined forces. Moreover, their clans are originally related. So, I feel that we can join forces as well." Yi Xian turned his head to look. In the distance, Xiaofan and Qin Yu stood on one side. Both of them were meditating and seemed to be cultivating. However, he knew that both of them were definitely paying attention to this side. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian frowned deeply. If the two of them didn't join forces, then Xiao Yu would definitely join forces when she came to look for him. Moreover, this woman was talking and laughing with him just now. When he thought of this, Yi Xian turned his head to look at Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu blinked her eyes. Her gaze was clear and she had an innocent expression on her face. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. How could he believe that Xiao Yu was so innocent? Those who were sent to fight for the Tao God's ruins would definitely be determined in terms of strength or intelligence. This woman wanted to use him. Scheming? Yi Xian smiled. "Miss Xiao, I'm an honest person. I won't beat around the bush. I'll just say what I want to say. To be honest, Do you think it's appropriate for us to start messing with each other before we even reach the Tao God's ruins? Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian with a smile still on her face. Yi Xian continued, I know that once we reach the Tao God's ruins, if we discover something good, the four of us will definitely fight for it. However, we haven't reached the Tao God's ruins yet, right? Moreover, are you sure that the Tao God's ruins are safe? What if there's danger inside? The smile on Xiao Yu's face gradually disappeared. Yi Xian continued, I'll say it again. I feel that the four of us should join forces now, at least for now. Xiao Yu looked at Yi Xian for a moment, then chuckled. Young Master Yi, you should read less books. This world is much more complicated than you think. If you read too many books, it's easy for your brain to have problems, which is to become pedantic. With that, she turned around and left. On the spot, Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. He thought to himself, silly girl, if I hadn't read more books, I would have killed the three of you right now. Following that, the starship fell into silence again. Yi Xian realized that he was still unable to unite these people. Actually, his true goal was to see if he could rope these people in, because he realized that these young people had all reached the demigod realm. They had reached the demigod realm at such a young age. Their futures were limitless. However, he realized that this idea of his might not work. These people were all top-notch monstrous geniuses nurtured by their respective clans. They were not that easy to fool. They were silent the entire way. 3 days later, the starship stopped. They're here. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the starry sky not far away, there was a ball of black mist floating there, and within the black mist was the Tao God's ruins. At this moment, Xiao Yu stood up and looked at the ball of black mist. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly vanished on the spot, and in the next moment, they'd entered the ball of black mist. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian, see that? They've joined forces. Yi Xian smiled, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Xiao Yu glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, and then she vanished on the spot as well. After a short moment, Yi Xian arrived at a mountain range, and there was an enormous floating palace in the depths of the mountain range. The surroundings of the palace were surrounded by a forest of mountains that towered into the clouds. This place had experienced countless years, and the entire mountain range was filled with an ancient aura. The trees in the surroundings even blotted out the sky, and they carried a ghastly and oppressive aura. Yi Xian and Xiao Yu arrived before the hall. Qin Yu and Zhu Fan didn't enter the hall, and they stood before the hall that was covered in weeds. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan and Qin Yu suddenly turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then Zhu Fan spoke abruptly, I never expected that you would really come. Yi Xian smiled, what? Zhu Fan grinned, we discussed earlier that the fewer people that know about the Tao God ruins, the better. Yi Xian frowned slightly. All of you intend to kill me? Zhu Fan gazed at Yi Xian. Yes. A terrifying aura suddenly locked onto Yi Xian, and it belonged to Xiao Yu. Obviously, the three of them had joined forces a long time ago. Xiao Yu gazed at Yi Xian and said with a smile, do you know why we should kill you first? Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Yu grinned. Because you look like an idiot when you're studying. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Zhu Fan glanced at the surroundings and said, do you know why we're making a move here? Have you noticed? There's a formation here that prevents all divine sense from entering. In other words, all divine sense from the outside world can't reach here. Once we kill you, we can push the blame of your death onto the Tao God realm. Perfect. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, I originally wanted to be more sincere and lead all of you to a win-win situation. But now it would seem like. As he spoke, he shook his head and sighed. Xiao Yu ridiculed, a win-win situation. You're really terrifyingly pedantic. No, it's not terrifyingly stupid. There's actually someone as naive as you in this world. How laughable. Yi Xian suddenly said, do you know why I didn't join forces with you? Xiao Yu frowned slightly and was about to speak. Meanwhile, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and sliced lightly. Hiss. Without any warning, Zhu Fan's head flew into the air while blood sprayed out like a fountain. It was an instant kill. Xiao Yu, and Qin Yu's expressions instantly changed violently. Yi Xian grinned. Because all of you are no different than ants before me. As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. Sorry, I acted cool again. Both of them were speechless. P.S. Seeking monthly votes. Just one will do. Chapter 2340. At this moment, Xiao Yu, and Qin Yu were completely dumbfounded. Instant kill? Yi Xian actually killed a demigod realm expert in an instant? How is this possible? Both of them couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. After all, even an ancient god realm expert might not be able to kill a demigod realm expert in an instant. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, what are you still standing there for? Why aren't you attacking? Qin Yu took a deep look at Yi Xian. I'm from the Qin clan of Boundary Mountain. Yi Xian suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss. Qin Yu's head flew off before he could finish speaking. Instant kill. Moreover, it was a complete annihilation that didn't even give him a chance to reincarnate. Yi Xian shook his head. I hate people who use their backers when they can't win. He paused for a moment and continued, what I mean is, I hate it when others use their backers, but I don't hate it when I use mine. Qin Yu, in the distance, Xiao Yu's face turned pale, and she looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Yu. What about me? Xiao Yu's voice trembled, why are you so strong? You. Aren't you bullying the weak? Bullying the weak? Yi Xian laughed. He'd always been bullied by others, and he'd never imagined that he would one day be able to bully others. Xiao Yu suddenly said, I surrender. Yi Xian shook his head, I refuse. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss. Xiao Yu's head flew off and vanished. She was completely annihilated. Yi Xian chuckled lightly, and then he opened his palm, and 3 spatial rings slowly floated into his hand. They were the spatial rings of these 3 people. But very quickly, his face sank completely. Because he noticed that there were less than 100,000 universe veins in these 3 spatial rings. So few? Yi Xian frowned. Obviously, these 3 people hadn't chosen to bring more universe veins and divine items before coming here. It was probably a precaution. Yi Xian was speechless. Right now, he was really, really poor. Previously, he had a total of 220 million Ian veins. After giving Sumu 50 million, he used the sword skill and broke through and spent another 100 million. Right now, he had less than 70 million Ian veins left. Are there many? In fact, it wasn't much. This was because he still needed many more Ian veins in the future. Moreover, he still needed to nurture the experts of Guanxian Academy. Therefore, 70 million Ian veins was not a lot at all. He was a little poor. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, then turned around and walked towards the main hall. Right now, he only hoped that he could gain a bit more from this mystic realm. When Yi Xian walked to the entrance of the hall, he seemed to think of something. He looked at Daebi and asked, Brother Bai, is it dangerous inside? He was really scared. Handsome for only 3 days. Even though his current strength was extremely strong, and it was comparable to an ancient god realm expert, he still had to be careful because he might be tricked. Daebi did not respond. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, Brother Bai. Were you beaten by Qing again? Dedeabi, Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Dedeabi suddenly said, I'm really busy, Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't pester Dedeabi anymore. He gently pushed the door open. As soon as the door opened, an ancient aura rushed out. Yi Xian frowned slightly. His mind stirred, and the sword will surrounded him to protect him. Yi Xian walked into the hall. The entire ground was empty. Not far in front of him, there was a praying mat. On the praying mat, an old man sat cross-legged. The old man wore a loose black robe, and his long hair was casually draped behind him. Yi Xian immediately bowed deeply. Junior Yi Xian greets Senior. There was no response. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Senior Dao Shen? I'm with Qin Guan. Qin Guan. At this moment, the old man suddenly slowly raised his head. He looked at Yi Xian and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were cloudy, but gradually became clear. The old man looked at Yi Xian. Miss Qin Guan? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The old man sized up Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled slightly. Very good. Yi Xian bowed slightly. Thank you for your praise, Senior. The old man said, You're here for my inheritance? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Dao Shen was silent. Yi Xian said seriously, Senior, I think I'm very suitable. The old man smiled. Why? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Can I tell the truth? The old man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian said seriously, because Senior won't meet anyone more outstanding than me. The old man was stunned. After a moment, he hesitated and said, Are all young people nowadays so immodest? Yi Xian was speechless. The old man suddenly smiled. You're really not bad. However, you're a swordsman, right? Yi Xian nodded. The old man shook his head. Your Dao has been established. You're not suitable for my inheritance. Yi Xian was silent. He had comprehended the sword Dao of the human world. As the old man said, it was very difficult to inherit someone else's Dao since he had his own Dao. The old man sighed, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. In fact, Yi Xian was indeed not bad and met his requirements. However, Yi Xian was a swordsman, and a swordsman was not suitable for his inheritance. Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, this is simple. Give me your inheritance, and I'll find you an outstanding genius, a super genius. The old man was stunned. Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? The old man hesitated. Yi Xian smiled. Even if Senior doesn't believe me, you should believe Miss Qin Guan, right? Qin Guan. The old man smiled. Do you have a candidate in mind? Yi Xian nodded. Yes, she won't disgrace Senior. After a moment of silence, the old man glanced at his surroundings, and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Fine. Saying so, he opened his palm, and a black scroll slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. My inheritance is in this scroll. Yi Xian received the scroll and bowed. I won't disappoint Senior. The old man smiled. Take care. Saying so, his body gradually disappeared. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Senior, do you have anything else? The old man blinked. What? Yi Xian directly said, for example, a time vein god item. The old man shook his head. There were hundreds of millions of time veins before, but Miss Qin Guan took them away. Qin Guan. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yi Xian had to admit that he was completely speechless. Qin Guan took away all the treasures. Moreover, she even took this mystic realm out to sell. This woman was worthy of being called. This woman was indeed a businessman. Sigh. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. At this moment, the old man suddenly smiled. "Little guy, you know Miss Qin Guan?" Yi Xian nodded. The old man said softly, "She is an extraordinary person. If I had met her earlier, I might have had a different ending." Yi Xian frowned. "Normally, with Senior's current strength, it should be very difficult for you to die. But Senior..." Saying so, he didn't continue. With Dedeabi here, he could see through the illusion. This old man was not a clone, but the main body. And now, the main body of the old man was disappearing bit by bit. No, it should be said that this old man had died a long time ago. He was just hanging on by a breath. After a moment of silence, the old man sighed. "It's a long story." Saying so, he looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. "You know, the stronger you are, the smaller you will feel compared to the vast universe. This feeling." Saying so, his expression became even more complicated. Yi Xian was silent. He could actually understand this Tao God because he also had this feeling. Previously, when he fought with his father, he wanted to see how far he was from his father and the others. However, he found that he still couldn't feel his father's true height. Even if he was very strong now. Most of the time, it was not the collapse of the realm, but everyone's vision and realm were limited. For example, a genius in a village might be the first in the village, but what if he went to the town? In the town, he might not be the first. But what if he went to the city? Then he might only be considered ordinary. In the whole country, he might not even be considered ordinary, but in the whole world, or even the whole universe. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. Most of the time, one's vision would be limited by one's knowledge. If he had not met Qing, and his father, he would definitely think that the ancient god realm was very, very powerful. However, after meeting Qing, and his father, he knew that the ancient god realm was considered powerful to him at the moment, but compared to the whole universe, it was still considered low. By this time, the Tao God had completely disappeared. The other party still did not explain how he ended up in such a situation. Yi Xian did not pursue the matter further because it was meaningless. Yi Xian glanced at the scroll in his hand and bowed slightly to the person in front of him. "I won't let you down." Saying so, he looked around. The hall was empty, not a single treasure could be found. Yi Xian was speechless. Obviously, Qin Guan had taken everything away. What a bandit! Yi Xian did not linger, turning around and leaving. When Yi Xian left the main hall, 3 terrifying auras suddenly descended from the sky. In the next moment, these 3 auras locked onto him. Yi Xian looked into the distance and saw 3 old men standing not too far away. All 3 of them were ancient god realm experts. Yi Xian frowned, only ancient god realm? Who were they looking down on? He naturally knew that these 3 people in front of him must be the family experts behind Xiao Yu, and the others. At this time, the leading old man in the distance suddenly said, "You killed them." Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." The old man's expression suddenly became ferocious. "Who gave you the dog?" At this point, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and in the next moment, Yi Xian appeared behind the old man, a sword stuck in his throat. The 3 old men were dumbfounded. Behind the old man, Yi Xian's expression was calm. "Ancient god? That's it?" The 3 old men. Chapter 2341. The remaining 2 ancient god realm experts were in a state of complete chaos. He'd instantly killed an ancient god with a single strike of his sword. Meanwhile, one of the ancient god realm experts spoke in a trembling voice, You're an ancient god realm expert." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Ancient god realm expert? What kind of trash is that?" As soon as he finished speaking, he slashed with his sword. Hiss! 2 rays of sword energy pierced through the space between the 2 old men's brows, and they were instantly annihilated. Yi Xian opened his palm, and 3 spatial rings slowly floated into his palm. Yi Xian glanced at them, and he was still slightly disappointed. The 3 spatial rings actually contained less than 10 million universe veins. They were truly too poor. Of course, it was better than nothing. Yi Xian put the spatial rings away, turned around, and left. Not long after Yi Xian left, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared here, and his expression was extremely unsightly as he glanced at the battlefield. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man appeared not too far away from the white-haired old man. The middle-aged man glanced at the battlefield and said, "Brother Qin Gu, looks like they've met with misfortune." Qin Gu. He was the current patriarch of the Qin clan. Qin Gu's face was expressionless. "Zhuan, what do you think?" Zhuan. The current patriarch of the Zhu clan. Zhuan fell silent for a moment before he said, "That fellow, Yi Xian, isn't simple." Qin Gu's expression was gloomy. "So what?" Zhuan sighed softly. Qin Gu's face was expressionless. "Look at that hall in the distance. It's empty. This means that he's obtained the Tao God's inheritance." The Tao God's inheritance. Zhu An's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Both he and Qin Gu were at the ancient God realm now, and the greatest temptation to them was the realm above the ancient God realm. Moreover, throughout the universe, only the Tao God had broken through to the ancient God realm. In other words, the Tao God's inheritance was their last hope. The reason they'd allowed the younger generation to explore this secret realm was because if they allowed the older generation to do it, then they would really have to fight to the death. So, they'd come to a tacit agreement to let the younger generation fight for it. Only in this way would there be no internal strife between the large clans. But they'd never imagined that it would actually benefit others. Qin Gu said in a low voice, "This enmity must be avenged." Zhuan nodded. Indeed. Actually, both of them were well aware that they could not give up on the inheritance of the Tao God. Zhuan suddenly asked, "What about that person from the Shao clan?" Qin Gu glanced around and said, "Who knows?" Zhuan said solemnly, "We have to contact her. Our 3 clans must join forces now." After a moment of silence, Qin Gu said, "To the Shao clan." With that, the 2 of them disappeared on the spot. Not long after they left, a beautiful woman in a red dress appeared here. She was the current patriarch of the Shao clan, Xiaofan. There was a young woman by Xiaofan's side, and this young woman was 60 to 70% similar to Xiaoyu. Xiaofan suddenly asked, "Ling, what do you think?" After a moment of silence, the girl said, "According to my investigation, this person is a super distinguished guest of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. In other words, he has a close relationship with the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Ant died in the hands of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion didn't give face to the Shao clan because of him. It's simple. The force behind this person is stronger than the Shao clan." Auntie. It was Madame Shao that Yi Xian had encountered at Celestial Treasure City. Xiaofan asked. "Anything else?" The young woman continued, "He was pursued in the ancient world of mysteries, but he's still alive and well. However, I don't know if it's because of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion or because of the mysterious force behind him." Xiaofan fell silent for a moment before she said, "Continue." The young woman sighed softly, "We can't take revenge." Xiaofan closed her eyes slowly. The inheritance of the Tao God. The young woman spoke in a low voice, "And, while the inheritance of the Tao God is important, his life and the Shao clan are even more important. Moreover, if you really want to, then you can wait. Because it won't be long before the Zhu and Qin clans act against him. At that time, we'll be able to see what happens to them." Xiaofan fell silent for a moment before she said, "I'll do as you say." As soon as she finished speaking, both of them vanished on the spot. Yi Xian had returned to Guanxian Academy in the universe of gods. At this moment, a huge change had occurred in Guanxian Academy. Presently, there were over 3,000 students in Guanxian Academy, and there were less than 100 students in Wuyuan. Moreover, the academy was eliminating many people every day. This was suggested by Qing Qiu. There were no restrictions when they entered, but after entering, if they didn't work hard and diligently, they would be eliminated and leave the academy. Therefore, many poor students worked very hard after entering Guanxian Academy because they knew that this was their only chance to change their fate. The assessment of the two academies was different. Wuyuan focused on combat strength, while the Civil Academy focused on literary attainments. The two academies took completely different paths. When Yi Xian returned to Guanxian Academy, Qing Qiu immediately looked for him. In the backyard, Yi Xian sat while Qing Qiu stood with a cup of tea in her hand. Qing Qiu spoke in a low voice, "Brother young master, if we continue to develop, Wuyuan's strength will definitely crush the Civil Academy. There won't be any problems now, but many years later, when Master, Brother young master, and I are no longer around, the Civil Academy will be completely suppressed by Wuyuan. At that time, the academy might be seriously divided and have internal strife. This. You have to think of a way." Yi Xian thought for a while, then smiled. "There's only one way." Qing Qiu was curious. "What is it?" Yi Xian smiled. "Find a dean who is skilled in both literature and martial arts, a dean who is extremely powerful. This way, we can suppress the two academies." Qing Qiu thought for a while, then nodded. "That's possible." Yi Xian smiled. "It's not that easy to balance, but we have to work hard. When the time comes, there will be more rules. Otherwise, as you said, Wuyuan will be too powerful in the future and completely suppress the Civil Academy." Qing Qiu nodded slightly. She seemed to have thought of something, then blinked. "Brother young master, didn't you notice anything?" Yi Xian was a little confused. "Notice what?" Qing Qiu glared at Yi Xian, then turned to leave. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This girl had actually reached Dongxian. Dongxian. How long had it been? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. In all fairness, he thought he was a monstrous genius, a real monstrous genius. Moreover, he had Dedeabi and his father's help, but he was only an ancient god realm. Yet this girl had already reached Dongxian. How many days had she been cultivating? This was ridiculous. Even Yi Xian felt that this was not normal. This Qing Qiu was probably a super big shot, not weaker than his father, Dedeabi, and Dedeabi. Then who could it be? Yi Xian sighed softly. He missed Xiao Ta a little. If Xiao Ta was here, he would know. After all, he did not know much about his father's era, but Xiao Ta did. I wonder how Xiao Ta is doing now. And Xiao Han. Was the Qingxian sword modified by Qing again? And Xiaoan. Xiaoan must have improved a lot by following Qing heir, right? After all, he was following Qing heir. At this moment, a loud laugh came from the distant sky. Brother Yi, I'm here. Yi Xian looked up at the sky. In the next moment, a man appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing the person, Yi Xian was stunned. It was Dao Ling. Yi Xian stood up and smiled. Dao Ling. He looked behind Dao Ling and asked, where are Tianqi, Shi Tian, and Jun Xie? Dao Ling smiled. They will be here some time later. My family is fine, so I rushed here first. As he spoke, he sized Yi Xian up. Then he said, what level are you in now? Yi Xian smiled. What realm are you in? Dao Ling chuckled. Peak Mysterious Realm. I'll be at Dongxian soon. Yi Xian frowned. Only Peak Mysterious Realm? Dao Ling was taken aback. What realm are you in? Yi Xian smiled. Just Ancient God Realm. Ancient God Realm. Dao Ling's expression froze. Before coming here, he had met President Nan Qing of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, so he knew some of the realms. But he didn't expect Yi Xian to have reached Ancient God Realm so fast. Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled. Why? Dao Ling sighed. You're a freak. I thought I was fast enough, but you're faster than me. Yi Xian sized Dao Ling up and then said, Are you already at the peak of the Zhishuan realm? Dao Ling nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. Lacking money? Dao Ling nodded. If I have enough time veins, I should be able to reach Ancient God Realm. I have a 70 to 80% chance. Yi Xian smiled. How much do you need? Dao Ling shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian opened his palm and a storage ring floated in front of Dao Ling. There were 10 million time veins in the storage ring. Yi Xian said with a smile, Take them. Dao Ling was taken aback and said, Brother. Brother Yi, what should we do? I can't. I can't. Even so, he had already snatched the storage ring. Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Ling held the storage ring in his hand and said with a trembling voice, I should have come to find you earlier. Yi Xian, Dao Ling looked at Yi Xian. Brother Yi, I'm going to cultivate. If I have to fight in the future, I won't even frown if I have to climb a mountain of blades or dive into a sea of flames. He turned and left. Yi Xian, Dao Ling naturally wanted to join Wu Yuan. Therefore, he went to look for Qing Qiu. When he saw Qing Qiu, he was stunned. Then he said, Little girl, are you the dean of Wu Yuan? Qing Qiu looked at Dao Ling, What did you call me? Dao Ling smiled. Little girl. Qing Qiu suddenly disappeared from the spot. Dao Ling's expression changed drastically. He raised his arms to block. Boom! In an instant, Dao Ling flew above the clouds. The next moment, a shadow suddenly descended from the sky and stomped down. Boom! Dao Ling instantly fell from the sky and smashed into the depths of a mountain range. In the air, Qing Qiu clapped her hands. I only have one brother. After saying that, she took out a steamed bun. She took a bite and turned to leave. Dao Ling. P.S. I also like to read. I also hate those authors who update slowly. They have no integrity at all. But for some reason, I don't hate myself. Chapter 2342. In the abyss, Dao Ling looked at the sky in disbelief. He was beaten up by a little girl? It was ridiculous. After a while, Dao Ling said in a deep voice, I have to stay away from Brother Ye's younger sisters in the future. He finally realized it. This Brother Yi himself wasn't much, but these younger sisters were each more perverted than the other. Cherish your life and stay away from Yi Xian's younger sisters. In the following time, Yi Xian began to develop Guanxian Academy. As his father had said, if he wanted to change the world, he couldn't just talk about it. He had to do it. Now, this was indeed his lifelong goal. One couldn't just be pretentious in life. He had to do something meaningful. In the hall, Yi Xian quietly listened to Qing Qiu and Xu Xian's reports. Now, Guanxian Academy had reached the see-through realm, including Qing Qiu, Yan Bei, and Xiaofan. 3 see-through realm. It could be said that Guanxian Academy was the strongest in the universe of gods. This was under the circumstances that Yi Xian was excluded. If Yi Xian was included, Guanxian Academy would be invincible in the universe of gods. In fact, Yi Xian alone was enough to make the Academy invincible in the universe of gods. Moreover, the major forces in the universe of gods were very friendly to Guanxian Academy. Not only that, They also tried their best to send their own people to Guanxian Academy because there was the greatest room for improvement. It could be said that Guanxian Academy was developing rapidly. In the hall, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Qingqiu. "How are the disciples of Wuyuan?" Qingqiu said, "There are a total of 160 disciples in Wuyuan. I carefully selected them. According to your request, I didn't choose the most talented ones. I also chose many with good temperament and are able to endure hardships. Their cultivation speed is indeed much slower than those monstrous geniuses, but I believe that they won't be any worse than those monstrous geniuses in the future. There is no end to the path of martial arts. A moment of victory or defeat doesn't mean anything. Those who walk to the end will have the last laugh." Yi Xian smiled. "Very good." As he spoke, he turned to look at Shu Xian. "Elder Xian, you must also remember that the students taught by the Institute of Literature cannot be inflexible, or flexible. Do you understand?" He was also afraid of those bookworms, the kind who liked to preach great principles but did not put them into practice. This kind of people was the most terrifying, they would harm the country and the people. Shu Xian nodded. "I understand." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Elder Xian, Qingqiu, from now on, we will go in two directions. In the first direction, while you let them cultivate, you must also take them to the secular world to have a look. Let them truly experience the sufferings of the human world. To read 10,000 books and travel 10,000 miles, both are indispensable." Elder Xian smiled. "Very good." Qingqiu also nodded. "Sure." Yi Xian continued, "Also, we need to take them to see the universe outside, let them know how big it is, let them know how insignificant they are. Only when they know how insignificant they are will they not be complacent, and will work harder." Qingqiu suddenly said, "Elder brother, I have to remind you that we are short of money." "Short of money?" Yi Xian nodded. "How much?" Qingqiu rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "Elder brother, you can't do this." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Qingqiu said in a deep voice, "Our institute is different from the past, I mean that we need to be self-reliant. What I mean is that we need to be self-reliant. We can't keep spending your money. After all, you don't have unlimited money." Yi Xian thought for a while and said, "What do you think?" Qingqiu pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "I've investigated how the other powers earn money during this period of time, and I noticed that the Celestial Treasure Pavilion earns the most money. However, it's not suitable for us to do business." Yi Xian frowned. "Sell books?" Qingqiu smiled and said, "Not ordinary books, but books about cultivation. These books are very helpful to cultivation, and we can auction them off. Apart from that, we can also cooperate with many factions and let our students give lectures. Of course, they'll be about cultivation," as she said, the corners of her mouth curled up. "Don't we have the Divine Path Code given by Pavilion Master Qingguan? We can let our students go to other universes to give lectures about the Divine Path Code, and we will charge a fee for each lecture. In this way, we can train our students and earn money." Yi Xian said with a smile. "That's a good idea." Qingqiu nodded. "Big brother Swordmaster, you have a rather wide network of connections. If it's possible, you can get some books that are similar to the Divine Tao Codex. In this way, our academy wouldn't have to worry about the problem of funds in the near future." Yi Xian nodded. "Sure." After the three of them discussed for a moment, Shu Xian retreated. Yi Xian suddenly looked towards Qingqiu. He opened his palm, and the Tao God's inheritance scroll slowly floated in front of Qingqiu. "Girl, this is the inheritance of a senior. It should be of help to you." In the end, he gave this inheritance to Qingqiu because no one was more suitable than her. Qingqiu looked at the inheritance scroll and shook her head. "Brother, I don't need it." Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Qing Qiu smiled. I have my own Dao, and I will only walk my own Dao. Yi Xian was helpless. He knew that Qing Qiu had her own Dao like him. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for her to accept someone else's orthodoxy. Qing Qiu giggled. Give it to the right person. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Sure. After saying that, he put away the scroll. He felt a little helpless in his heart. This girl's cultivation could only be described in one word: awesome. Qing Qiu suddenly said, Brother, I think we can use the universe of gods as a foundation and change it first. Then, we can slowly go out and change the outside world. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Continue. Qing Qiu nodded. Changing the universe of gods might affect the interests of other forces. However, this isn't a big problem because we can lure them with benefits. Now, they want to join our Guan Xian Academy. As long as we can provide them with enough benefits, they will be willing to change. If they don't change, they will be eliminated. She looked at Yi Xian. Brother, I know you're very benevolent. Most of the time, you don't want to be the bad guy. However, I have to tell you that if we want to change the world and the rules, we have to overthrow many of the bad forces, especially those that are cruel and heartless. We can tempt those good forces with benefits, but when it comes to those evil and wicked forces, we have to use thunderous methods to annihilate them. She walked in front of Yi Xian and passed the tea to Yi Xian. Our goal isn't to be the only one. However, we have to be the only one. If you're not the only one, who will listen to you? Therefore, we have to be benevolent and treat all forces well. We also have to use thunderous means. Yi Xian looked at Qing Qiu silently. Qing Qiu blinked. Brother, are you worried? Yi Xian nodded. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about the academy. Qing Qiu was silent for a moment. I know what you're worried about. When we become stronger, you're afraid that the academy will gradually go against its original intentions. Just like what the book said, the young dragon slayer will eventually become an evil dragon, right? Yi Xian nodded. Qing Qiu smiled. As long as you're here, the academy will never change. Yi Xian asked, what if I'm gone? Qing Qiu smiled. There's still me. With me around, the academy will never fall into chaos. Yi Xian smiled. What if you're gone? Qing Qiu smiled. Brother, you're wrong to think like this. What we need to do is to do what we can. It's not good to think too much about the future. Of course, I can't help but think that if I'm gone one day, I'll definitely choose a more outstanding person for the academy and let him manage the academy. As for what happens after that, it's something for the next dean to think about. Do what we can. Yi Xian thought for a while and smiled. You're right. Qing Qiu suddenly handed a cup of tea to Yi Xian. Brother, have some tea. Yi Xian took the teacup and took a sip. Then he said, go ahead and do it. I'll support you. Whether it's money or anything else, just let me know if you need anything. Qing Qiu nodded. Okay. She hesitated for a while. As far as I know, you're from Qing City, right? Yi Xian nodded. Qing Qiu smiled. I want to start with these small worlds. Let's start with Qing City. It just so happens that there's an academy in Qing City. Let's start with the small worlds, then slowly encircle the larger worlds. Finally, we'll change the entire universe. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Qing Qiu grinned. I want money. Yi Xian shook his head. How much? He knew that doing these things would definitely require money. Qing Qiu raised a finger. Yi Xian blinked. 5 million universe veins? Qing Qiu shook his head. 50 million. Yi Xian's expression froze. Qing Qiu smiled. Do I? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. With that, he opened his palm. A spatial ring flew to Qing Qiu. Inside the spatial ring, there wasn't 50 million, but 70 million. Qing Qiu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Those 20 million universe veins are for you. You need a lot of universe veins to cultivate now, right? Qing Qiu nodded. Yi Xian smiled. You can use 2,000 first. If it's not enough, come find me. Qing Qiu glanced at Yi Xian. Okay. Yi Xian smiled. I'm going to work. With that, he turned and left. Qing Qiu looked at Yi Xian in the distance. Her right hand clenched the spatial ring. Her eyes were full of determination. Brother, I want the universe to change because of you. I want all living beings in the universe to believe in you. With that, she slowly closed her eyes. Only by using the belief of all living beings as your sword can you reach the level of the three of them. With that, she suddenly looked a little dazed. What did she just say? Qing Qiu frowned. She was a little puzzled. Chapter 23:43. In the bamboo forest, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. He was very worried. He only had 10 million universe veins left. What could he do with just 10 million? What should he do? Yi Xian was helpless. He had to obtain universe veins. Moreover, he knew that in the future, there would be more and more things that needed universe veins. A little bit of money would not be enough to solve the problem. The academy had not completely gotten on the right track, so it could not start to make a profit in a short period of time. During this period, it needed his support. Otherwise, the academy's development would be limited. Money. Yi Xian looked at the spatial ring in his hand and fell into silence. 200 million. The 200 million universe veins from before would soon be used up. Moreover, if he wanted to nurture ancient god realm and ancient god realm cultivators, he would need even more universe veins. Even if he wanted to cultivate, he had no way to do so. Every time he cultivated his sword skill, he had to spend a huge amount of money. Without money, he couldn't break through the current universe and jump out. Awkward. Earn money. Yi Xian sighed. He had to go out and earn money. Sell the Divine Tao Codex? He had thought about it, but he felt that selling the book that Qingguan had given him wasn't a good idea. However, he could use another method. For example, giving a lecture. Thinking of this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth rose slightly. If he went to give a lecture and spread the Divine Tao Codex, the significance would be completely different. Thinking of this, Yi Xian got up and was about to leave. At this moment, a student came before Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Dean, Immortal Ancient City's Lady Xian Guyao is here to visit. Immortal Ancient City. Yi Xian was slightly startled, and then he hurriedly said, "Invite her in." The student bowed slightly and was about to leave when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Forget it. I'll go myself." After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. At the entrance of Guanxian Academy, Yi Xian saw Xian Guyao. Today, Xian Guyao was wearing a snow-white dress. Her hair was as black as ink, and she stood tall like a jade. She was quiet and elegant, and her watery eyes carried a faint sorrow that made others feel pity for her. Xian Gudian was slightly stunned when he saw Yi Xian, and then he said softly, "You've returned." Yi Xian smiled and said, "The next time you come to find me, you don't need to report, just go in directly." Xian Gudian's expression was calm. "I wouldn't dare. You're the dean of Guanxian Academy now." Yi Xian smiled. "Why are you angry?" Xian Gudian was expressionless. "No." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Don't be angry. I've only just returned." There are many new rules in the academy, so I don't know about them. However, I have already told them. The next time you come to the academy, you can go in and find me directly. Xian Gudian looked at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian sized up immortal ancient heaven and was astonished. We already reached profound grotto? Xian Gudian nodded. Yi Xian gave her a thumbs up. Amazing. My God. Xian Gudian instantly blushed when she heard this, and she glared angrily at Yi Xian. You're starting to be indecent again. Yi Xian roared with laughter, and then he said, I'm going to give a lecture. Are you interested in going with me? Xian Gudian's beautiful brows knit together slightly. A lecture? Yi Xian nodded. The academy has just been established, so everything is difficult, especially when it comes to money. So, I need to give lectures and earn some money. Xian Gudian said in a low voice, do you lack a lot? Yi Xian nodded. Xian Gudian suddenly withdrew a spatial ring and passed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at it, and there were actually 30 million universe veins within it. Yi Xian was astounded. What are you doing? Xian Gudian spoke indifferently, take it and use it. Yi Xian shook his head repeatedly. No, I can't take your universe veins. Xian Gudian looked coldly at Yi Xian. Why can't you take my universe veins? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Don't be angry. I don't have any other intentions, it's just that, Xian Gudian said coldly, just what? Is it too little? Yi Xian smiled bitterly again. You know that's not what I meant. Xian Gudian placed the spatial ring in Yi Xian's hand and said softly, wait until you have money. It won't be too late to return it to me then. Yi Xian said in a low voice, do your parents know that you are doing this? Xian Gudian's expression was calm. I am the next patriarch of the ancient immortal clan. Everything in the ancient immortal clan is mine. Yi Xian, Xian Gudian glanced at Yi Xian. You are going to give a lecture, so I won't go. Next time, if you come back, can you come to Ancient Immortal City as a guest? Ancient Immortal City as a guest. Yi Xian remained silent. He had said that he wouldn't go to Ancient Immortal City again. It was clear that Xian Gudian still couldn't let go of this matter. Xian Gudian said softly, if you are unwilling, it is fine. It was my ancient immortal clan that went too far. Yi Xian smiled. You are you, and the ancient immortal clan is the ancient immortal clan. Xian Gudian looked at Yi Xian. But I am the next patriarch of the ancient immortal clan. The ancient immortal clan is mine. Yi Xian smiled. I know. Don't worry about this. I am no longer angry. Really? Xian Gudian was silent for a moment before saying, take care. After saying that, she turned and left. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, time vein. Xian Gudian didn't even turn her head. If you don't like it, then throw it away. After saying that, she disappeared into the horizon. In the same place, Yi Xian looked at the spatial ring in his hand and shook his head with a sigh. He seemed to have the potential to live off a woman. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian turned and left. Guanxian Academy had Qing Qiu and Shu Xian, so he was at ease. His current goal was to make money. This time, he decided to go to Immortal Treasure City. That was the real stage. He had placed the Tao God inheritance with Shu Xian. Once Tian Qi arrived, Shu Xian would pass the Tao God inheritance to Tian Qi. Among these people, he felt that Tian Qi was the most suitable. This fellow's mind was too simple, and when he cultivated, he would be very terrifying. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stopped and changed into a white robe. There were 2 words engraved on the left chest, Guanxian. At his waist, there was a Dedeabi without a pen case. After changing into the new clothes, Yi Xian started to tidy up his hair. He casually draped his hair behind him, and there was a trace of elegance in his unruly manner. Then, he took out a thick ancient book. This time, he brought many books with him that were annotated by Xu Xian. Most of them were about cultivation, but there were also some ancient books about literature. Since he was out to teach, he naturally had to explain in detail. And the annotations of Xu Xian were very, very detailed. After dressing up, Yi Xian disappeared into the starry sky. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived at Immortal Treasure City. At the entrance of Immortal Treasure City, the heads of the profound God world were still there. Anyone who entered Immortal Treasure City would see these heads. Ah! The profound God world, which was said to have ancient God realms, still couldn't shake Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Therefore, many people were even more curious about this Immortal Treasure Pavilion. How terrifying was this Immortal Treasure Pavilion? When Yi Xian arrived at the entrance of Immortal Treasure City, Xiaolan immediately came out to greet him. Xiaolan was slightly stunned when he saw Yi Xian's attire, and then he said respectfully, "Young Master Yi." Yi Xian smiled, "President Xiaolan." Xiaolan grinned, "Young Master Yi, how have you been?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'm fine. I'm just slightly poor." The corners of Xiaolan's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he didn't dare reply. Yi Xian suddenly said, "President Xiaolan, I want to give a lecture at Immortal Treasure City." Xiaolan frowned, "Lecture?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes. President Xiaolan, I don't have much of a reputation right now, so I'm sure no one will come to listen. I want you to help me publicize it. The powers in the universe will definitely give face to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion and allow their people to listen to my lecture. As for the more, the better." Xiaolan hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll arrange it." Yi Xian smiled, "Thank you." Xiaolan grinned, "Young Master Yi, you're too courteous." As soon as he finished speaking, he left. Yi Xian was arranged to stay in the most distinguished room in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion again. Yi Xian sighed softly in the starry sky. The Immortal Treasure Pavilion is really making money. Just the Immortal Treasure Pavilion alone brings a huge amount of income to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion every month. Besides that, this Immortal Treasure City collects rent every year. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian simply felt ashamed. The wealth of this rich woman, Qin Guan, is truly unimaginable. A thought suddenly arose in Yi Xian's mind. Should I live off a woman? As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, even Yi Xian himself was shocked. This Qin Guan isn't easy to deal with, and I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on to her. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it and started to organize the lecture he was going to give. He wasn't famous now, so there definitely wouldn't be many people when he gave a lecture. So, this first lecture was especially important because he had to make a name for himself. So, he directly prepared to talk about the Divine Tao Code in the first lecture. One day later, Xiaolan came to Yi Xian's room and bowed respectfully, "Young Master Yi, everyone is here." Yi Xian looked at Xiaolan, "How many people?" Xiaolan smiled, "About 100,000 people, 100,000 people." Yi Xian nodded, "Not bad." As he said that, he stood up, "Let's go." In a certain starry sky, this starry sky was a martial arts field that was opened up by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Now, it was set up as a lecture field by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. At this moment, there were more than 100,000 people gathered here. However, these 100,000 people were somewhat dumbfounded. Lecture? Yi Xian? Who is this? If it wasn't for the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, they wouldn't have come at all. At this moment, a sword light suddenly appeared in the depths of the starry sky. The next moment, Yi Xian appeared on the podium. Seeing Yi Xian, everyone's expression instantly became strange. Obviously, they were surprised that Yi Xian was so young. Yi Xian smiled, then said, "Thank you all for listening to my lecture. Today, I will talk about the Divine Tao Code. Below the podium, everyone was silent. At this moment, the Daobi on Yi Xian's waist slightly trembled, and the next moment, Yi Xian's aura directly rose. In an instant, Yi Xian's aura directly rose from the ancient god realm to the ancient god realm. At this moment, the 100,000 people below were dumbfounded. Ancient god realm. Someone said in shock, "Holy shit. So amazing?" Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "First, let me introduce myself. I am Yi Xian, the Dean of the Guanxian Academy. Everyone, don't think that I am an ancient god realm, it is actually nothing. My real identity is actually a second generation. Today, I will talk about how to act cool. Oh, no, how to learn, everyone. P.S. I have already thought it through. If I can't become a great god after writing for 6 years, then I will become a water god. Since I am a god, I can make do with it." Chapter 2344. Yi Xian felt slightly embarrassed. Damn it. I actually said something wrong. Down below, everyone was looking at Yi Xian with an odd expression. Yi Xian calmed himself down, and then he withdrew Qin Guan's Divine Tao Codex. He opened it and said, "Today, I'll tell all of you about this book that I wrote." When he spoke up to here, he glanced at Xiaolan, hesitated for a moment, and then changed his words. "Tell us about the Divine Tao Codex written by Miss Qin Guan." Xiaolan felt slightly embarrassed. This young Master Yi had almost said that he'd written the Divine Tao Codex himself. Perhaps others weren't aware, but he was. The Divine Tao Codex had been written by Qin Guan. Yi Xian continued. The Divine Tao Codex contains divine techniques, Taoist techniques, and magic techniques. Simply speaking, it's all sorts of divine techniques. Besides that, this book has some explanations about cultivation. Next, we'll start with magic techniques. In the beginning, everyone didn't care. However, as Yi Xian went on, everyone's expressions instantly changed. Magic techniques. Yi Xian introduced almost 9 types of top-rate magic techniques, and every single one of them was extremely rare and extremely powerful. However, Yi Xian refused to talk about the cultivation methods of these magic techniques. Everyone felt even more anticipation. If they could cultivate them, then it would greatly improve their strength. Right at this moment, everyone suddenly became excited. Because he'd started talking about how to cultivate. As he spoke, Yi Xian suddenly stopped at a critical point. Everyone below was stunned. One of them couldn't help but say, "Young Master Yi, continue." Yi Xian grinned. "That's all for today. Let's hear the next part of the explanation." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Everyone was stunned. In the next moment, all of them couldn't take it anymore. A young man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He gazed at Yi Xian and said furiously, "Continue." Yi Xian opened his palm, and a sword flew out, directly pointing at the young man's forehead. "What did you say?" The young man's face instantly turned pale. He hesitated for a moment, and then said in a trembling voice, "I didn't say anything." Yi Xian nodded and turned to leave. Everyone, after Yi Xian left, a commotion broke out. At the most crucial moment. Yi Xian actually stopped at the most crucial moment. This was infuriating. Many people went to find Xiaolan. Regarding this, Xiaolan was also very helpless. He couldn't control Yi Xian. The crowd did not leave. They were still making a ruckus. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had already returned to his room. At this time, Xiaolan came to Yi Xian's room. Xiaolan smiled. "Young Master Yi, are you still going to teach?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan asked, "Tomorrow?" Yi Xian nodded. Xiaolan smiled. "All right. With that, he was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Tomorrow is not a free lecture. If you want to listen to the lecture, everyone has to pay 1,000 universe veins, 1,000 universe veins." Xiaolan was stunned. 1,000 universe veins. Was that a lot? Actually, it was not a lot. But for people in Celestial Treasure Pavilion, it was definitely not a lot. But for some independent cultivators, it was not a small number. After all, not everyone was that rich. Of course, the value of Yi Xian's divine path code far exceeded this price. Not to mention 1,000 universe veins, even 100 million universe veins was worth it. For some cultivators, this was a book that could really change their fate. Xiaolan bowed slightly and then left. Xiaolan came to the lecture area. At this moment, everyone was still waiting. Xiaolan's expression was calm. "Young Master Yi said, we will continue the lecture tomorrow, but tomorrow, we will start charging fees. One class, 1,000 universe veins per person, 1,000 universe veins." As soon as he said this, there was an uproar. Soon, some people started cursing. 1,000 universe veins per class. What the hell is he thinking? That's right. Why doesn't he just rob a bank? He's really shameless. He's actually charging fees. I'm giving him face by listening to his lecture, but he's actually charging fees. What the hell? Who does he think he is? He's charging fees for his lecture. Tui. He's charging fees for his lecture. How immoral. What the hell is he? I'm going to freeload, spend money. Tui, dream on. Some people left amidst cursing. Moreover, as more and more people cursed, more and more people left. In just a short while, there were less than 2,000 people left. Xiaolan looked at the people who left and fell silent. He had discovered something terrifying. Most of those who left were independent cultivators. As for the disciples of the influential families, none of them left. Clearly, they had discovered the value of the divine path code that Yi Xian was talking about. Of course, there was another reason. 1,000 universe veins was really nothing to them. Xiaolan sighed softly and left. The next day, Yi Xian once again came to the practice field. At this time, there were far fewer people than yesterday. There were less than 20,000 people left. More than 80,000 people left. Yi Xian sighed softly. He did not say anything and took out the divine path code to continue his lecture. This time, he directly talked about the cultivation methods of the 9 types of magic arts. When Yi Xian began to talk about those cultivation methods, the people below were so excited that they could not control themselves. They had made a killing. At this moment, this was what everyone thought. These 9 spells were personally created by Qin Guan. Their power was absolutely invincible among those at the same level. At the same level, most of the time, it was a competition of spells and external objects. Time passed bit by bit. At night, Yi Xian closed the divine path code. He looked at the people below and smiled. Is it worth it? Everyone said in unison, it's worth it. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm going to go again tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Taoist techniques. However, there aren't many Taoist techniques. There are only 3 types. Moreover, they are extremely difficult to cultivate. One session costs 1,000 universe veins. Are you guys still coming? At this moment, a young man suddenly stood up and bowed to Yi Xian. Ding Yi is righteous. Righteous. It had to be said that Yi Xian was righteous. Because they knew how valuable the divine path code that Yi Xian was talking about was. 1,000 universe veins. It was as cheap as cabbages. Yi Xian smiled slightly. I don't teach to earn money. I only teach to benefit the cultivators of the world. The reason I take some money symbolically is to let everyone understand a principle. That is, you can't reap without sowing. You can't take it for granted. We should respect the knowledge and results of others. With that, he got up and left. Behind him, the people revealed expressions of admiration. The virtuous Dean Yi. In the distance, Xiaolan walked to Yi Xian's side and handed a spatial ring to Yi Xian. There were 20 million universe veins in the spatial ring. 20 million. Yi Xian put it away without batting an eyelid. How fragrant. With that, he walked off into the distance. Xiaolan, the people present were extremely excited. They had made a killing, and they were overjoyed. As if they thought of something, they started to call people. They called their friends, their family members. Soon, more and more people rushed towards the celestial treasure pavilion. After Yi Xian returned to his room, he looked at the spatial ring in front of him. There were 30 million universe veins in the spatial ring, and 20 million was earned just now. One had to say, the money earned this way was different. There was a sense of accomplishment. Making money with knowledge. Although he didn't write the book, he spread the knowledge himself. Strictly speaking, his contribution was the same as Qin Guan's. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled. He lightly patted his face. His skin seemed to be a bit thick. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian began to cultivate instant invincibility. He didn't jump into the universe because it was too expensive. He couldn't bear to play like that. He was studying the details of instant invincibility. Besides that, he would consolidate his realm every day when he had time. Because right now, his ancient god realm was very, very exaggerated. Take it slow. Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry. What he had now was time. The next day. After tidying up, Yi Xian went to the training field. There were more than 30,000 people attending the class today. About 10,000 more than the day before. Xiaolan walked to Yi Xian's side and smiled. These are the newcomers. They also want to listen to young Master Ye's class. Yi Xian looked at the crowd and smiled. Thank you for listening to my class. Saying that, he sat down and was about to start the class. At this moment, a young girl suddenly stood up. She held an ancient book in her hand and looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I am Xiaofan from Wuxia Academy. I have something to ask young Master Yi. Wuxia Academy. Yi Xian smiled. Speak. Xiaofan looked straight at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, as far as I know, this divine Dao code was written by our academy's Dean Qin Guan, right? Yi Xian nodded. Xiaofan nodded slightly. Since that's the case, then shouldn't young Master Yi use this book for his own benefit? Hearing this, Xiaolan's expression instantly changed. He knew the relationship between Yi Xian and Qin Guan. Young Master Yi had an extremely good relationship with the pavilion master. He was about to stop her, but Yi Xian stopped him. Yi Xian looked at Xiaofan and smiled. You think I shouldn't? Xiaofan nodded. Dean Yi, I think you shouldn't. What you're doing is disrespecting my dean and my Wuxia Academy. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Do you know how I got this book? Xiaofan looked straight at Yi Xian. I don't know. Yi Xian grinned. If you don't know, then you're talking nonsense here. Also, you said I don't respect Qin Guan and Wuxia Academy. Saying that, he smiled. Do you know that this book was given to me by Qin Guan? Xiaofan frowned slightly. What proof do you have? If you don't have proof that it was given by the dean, then you're a robber, a bandit. Qi. A sword pierced Xiaofan's forehead. Boom. In an instant, Xiaofan's body trembled violently. She was directly nailed to the spot. Everyone was shocked. Proof? Yi Xian got up and looked at Xia He. Who do you think you are? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.